Coming in at number 10, it's Earth 32. Unexpected. That's probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern. But when he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open. And who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call. First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, a cross between a Martian like Martian Manhunter and a Kryptonian like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave mixed with the Fortress of Solitude and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he showed up. Number 9. Blood League. Now, we have talked about the vampire Batman who appears in the Elseworld Batman Vampire Trilogy, and that version of Batman brings us an incredible story. While that vampire Batman inspired the Batman of Earth 43, their stories are slightly different in some crucial ways. For example, the Batman of Earth 43 intentionally sought out the dark demonic gift in order to face Dracula, instead of being unwillingly given the vampire curse from a good vampire. Batman defeated Dracula, but the curse proved too much for Bruce to handle, and he gave in to the full curse and embraced his new bloodlust. With someone like Batman as a crazed vampire, the other heroes of this Earth didn't last too long before they too were also turned into vampires, which is when, together, they formed the Blood League. I wouldn't call them heroes though. This superpowered group of vampires did enough damage on their own world that they decided to leave it and attack the planet Rann, and they were later coerced into invading the universe of Earth 13. Eventually, Batman and the Blood League even played a part in the death metal event.
Number 8. Witch Hunter Gwen. This one comes to us from an alternate cover, but I wanted to include it here because I love the design and I love the idea of Gwen in such a different role as this. This alternate version of Gwen appeared solely on the 2015 cover for 1602 Witch Hunter Angela issue number 1. At least, I believe we've only seen her here. This isn't the only time Gwen would appear as an alternate on a cover though either. During the summer of 2015, we were all suffering from Gwen fever, and as such she appeared on 20 different alternate covers, with all of them featuring different versions of Gwen. And since then, she's also had her own Gwenverse sort of come about, so there's a lot of Spider-Gwen out there running around, a lot of variants. Number 7. Ghost Spider. Not really a full-on alternate of Gwen, but another character that uses this same name, Ghost Spider. And I like Ghost Spider, so I thought I would include him. Ghost Spider is actually an alternate Peter Parker from Earth 11638. He is the version of Spider-Man who never lost his uncle. Instead, Uncle Ben helped Peter with his training, but also kinda turned him into a monster. Peter in this world was extremely successful, a wealthy celebrity scientist and philanthropist who also fought crime as the vigilante Amazing Spider. However, he started to use his technology to trap other spider variants from other worlds so he could drain them of their powers, taking all that power for himself. Having never learned the lesson, with great power comes great responsibility, but instead, with great power comes a great responsibility to stay powerful, from his uncle. However, when 616 Spider-Man was about to be drained, this alternate version had actually a change of heart and ended up sacrificing himself to free the main reality Peter, seemingly perishing but really becoming something new, becoming one with his regrets and the souls of the underworld. He was revived as Ghost Spider. No hyphen. And he's basically kind of like Ghost Rider meets Spider-Man, but he also uses the name Ghost Spider, so I just thought he would be an interesting one to include since he uses the same name that Spider-Gwen uses now currently in the comics. Number 6. Secret Wars. This version of Spider-Gwen is from the 2015 A-Force series. She was an alternate from the reality of Earth 16191, one of the protectors of Doom's Battleworld realm known as Arcadia, one of the patchwork domains from God Emperor Doom's kingdom that appeared during the 2015 Secret Wars event. In this reality, Spider-Gwen saved MJ from a Marvel Zombies horde, and it's kind of implied that the two may have some kind of romantic relationship in this universe. Or I don't know, they just seemed kind of flirty to me, so I could be wrong there, but picking up on some flirting. My flirting meter went off. Number 5. Gwenom, not the official name of this character, but a name that I gave them. While on Earth 65, Spider-Gwen actually does become Venom for a time, there is actually a version of her who stays as Venom and also becomes a detective. And actually the version, the name that we know Gwen as is kind of Gwenom, or like that's the editorial name, or Venom, but this version is Venom all the time, so I just thought why not just call her Gwenom, but she doesn't go by that name, just so you know. This is pretty cool though, right? This Gwen variant is from the alternate reality of Earth 617, where her origin story was actually the same as the 616 Gwen Stacy counterpart, up until she had a run-in with her own alternate from Earth 65, which caused the timeline to split, hence why her reality is known as 617. Get it? It's 616, but like one change. After the death of her father, George Stacy, which Gwen initially blamed Spider-Man for, Gwen ran into Spider-Gwen of Earth 65. Following their run-in with one another, where each was able to kind of provide some insight that helped the other, Gwen of Earth 617 was inspired to become a detective. Later, she would bond with the Venom symbiote of her Earth, becoming the hero known as Spider-Woman. But I like to call her Gwenom, just because if I called everyone Spider-Woman on this list, it'd be confusing. Speaking of, number 4, Spider-Woman. Seriously, one of the cutest realities around. On this Earth, Spider-Gwen is married to Miles Morales, and the two of them actually have kids together, one daughter and one son. Their children also inherited superpowers and fought for justice alongside their mom and dad as members of the Amazing Eight. The Amazing Eight is Earth 8's premier superhero team, which is made up of actual spider heroes from across the multiverse. This Gwen is not just a member of the Amazing Eight team, but also belongs to the Council of Spider-Women, which is made up of, well, you guessed it, alternate versions of Spider-Woman from across the Marvel multiverse, or Spider-Verse if you prefer. Number 3, Ghost Spider, with the hyphen. Ghost Spider is technically the main version of this character, but the weird thing is that although she may be more popular than the original Gwen Stacy from Marvel Comics at this point, who has been long gone, Spider-Gwen, or Ghost Spider as she is now known, actually started off herself as a variant. However, she has become so popular among fans that she's kind of become more known now as the main version of that character, which is kind of wild to think about. So even though it feels weird to have her on this list, as you know, she's the main person to inspire the variants that are on the list, she's the main person that inspired this list, it feels weird to not have her on here since she herself was inspired by the original Gwen Stacy of Earth 616. So really, she's a variant. Ghost Spider has been known by many names, initially being known as Spider-Woman before becoming Venom in her reality, and later becoming more well known as Spider-Gwen until recently in 2019, when she took the codename of Ghost Spider for herself. Number 2, Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy is technically also a main version of Gwen, if not, you know, the main version of Gwen, since she herself was the original. She hails from Earth 616, known as the main Marvel continuity in the comics. Here, Gwen's story was cut short when she was tragically killed during a fight between Green Goblin and Spider-Man. Being tossed from either George Washington or Brooklyn Bridge, depending on the version that you're reading of this story, Gwen plummeted towards the ground. Without enough time to catch her himself, Spider-Man shot a web towards her. This succeeded in securing Gwen, saving her from the fall, but tragically is believed to have caused Gwen's neck to snap, instantly killing her. Still, while Gwen is no longer among the living in the Earth 616 universe, her presence is constantly felt, with her friends and loved ones constantly remembering her and keeping her memory alive. Most recently, Spider-Man saw the progenitor adopt the image of Gwen during the AXE Judgment Day event, while acting as his judge, which shows you just how important Gwen still is to Peter even today, despite her being gone for so long from his life. Number 1, Gwenpool. Gwenpool is one of my favorite Gwen alternates. She is actually an alternate version of 2 different characters, a mashup of Gwen Stacy and Deadpool, hence Gwenpool. Gwenpool originates from a world where superheroes exist only in fiction, which has led many to believe that she exists in our universe, Earth 1218, the real world. However, Gwen doesn't actually have an official designated number for her Earth yet, so it's still kind of up for debate. Regardless, Gwen preferred to live in a fantasy world and eventually did end up in a fantasy world, coming to Earth 616. Finally existing in a world where superheroes were real, Gwen set out to become one herself, going out and getting a costume and ending up unintentionally with the hero name of Gwenpool. Number 10, Animated Spider-Verse. I love this version of Gwen, although really she is pretty similar to her comic book counterpart, but maybe that's why I love her so much. One thing she does have that her comic book counterpart does not is an audible voice. In both Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse, Gwen is voiced by Haley Steinfeld, who does an amazing job. I love how much we've gotten to explore her story, and I am hoping we get to spend a bit more time in her Earth the animated Earth 65 going forward in the franchise. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love alternate versions, we do have an alternate versions playlist, so you can click it, check it out. Number 9, Ghost Spider-Man. While only making a brief appearance in the comics, I have to mention this one. You know me, I'm a big Spider-Man fan, so any opportunity to talk about her, I am here for it, and I'm here for this one too. Unfortunately for me, she actually is an alternate that is both a combination of her and Ghost Spider. Ghost Spider-Man is one of the alternate heroic versions of May that appears in Spider-Verse issue number 2, when she summons the power of her alternates to defeat the Carnage variant. The costume Ghost Spider-Man wears is near identical to Gwen's, and for those who don't know, Ghost Spider is also the codename for Gwen. Like I said, she has had many codenames.
Number 8, DCeased. While Bruce Wayne did play a part in DC's answer to Marvel Zombies, DCeased, it was his successor that was arguably much more important. When the anti-life equation techno-organic virus infected a huge number of the Earth, Bruce got infected when he had to fight off the infected Nightwing and Tim Drake Robin. Using Mr. Freeze's cryosuit, he was able to slow down the virus long enough to study it and give information and say goodbye to the remaining Justice League and his son, Damian Wayne, who would go on to take his father's mantle at the age of just 13 years old. The fight against the anti-living eventually reached cosmic scales. The heroes eventually found themselves facing Erebos, the one who was responsible for the entire anti-living outbreak. Now, DCeased is a long comic book run, so I can't give you all the details in this short little time, but Damian essentially grows up over the run of the comic, stepping fully into his role as Batman and creating a relationship with the new Wonder Woman, Cassie. Alfred Pennyworth eventually becomes the new Spectre and bringing a cure for the anti-living, but right near the end, Damian organizes the final attack on Erebos in Limbo. Now, in an all-white batsuit that looks amazing, Damian put the life equation, the opposite to the anti-life equation, inside of himself, and he decided to detonate it inside of Erebos to destroy him and the anti-living from the inside out. He makes the ultimate sacrifice, and it's pretty awesome. Number 7, B-Rex. Some of the coolest stuff has come from the Dark Multiverse, and of all the alternate characters to come out of it, a Bruce Wayne who transferred his consciousness into the mechanical T-Rex in his Batcave has to be one of the most awesome. Now, as a Batman T-Rex, Batmanosaurus Rex, or just B-Rex if you prefer, Batman decided that he has been wasting time, not just completely wiping out his villains, and so he goes on a dinosaur rampage through Arkham Asylum, chomping and crushing inmates and staff alike. B-Rex gets recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, just like a bunch of other Dark Knights, and he was involved in the invasion of the regular multiverse and was even important to the revival of the Batman Who Laughs into the Darkest Night. Unfortunately, during the final battle, B-Rex and Batmage face off against Solomon Grundy, who had the strength to stop them both. Number 6, The Final Knight. The Final Knight is actually Duke Thomas, who was a sidekick to the Batman that the demon Barbados used as a gateway into the multiverse, and who was ultimately transformed into Barbados the Dragon of the End. Now this Batman, alongside the rest of his league, who were also transformed into dragons, brought the collapse of their world, and Duke fled into the multiverse to survive. Duke eventually returns to face these dragons, only to be saved by that universe's Nightwing, who brings Duke to the surviving members of the Justice League, who band together and give almost all of their lives to fight the dragons, with Duke being the one to bring down his old mentor. After slaying the Dragon of the End, Duke turned his hide into crazy awesome armor and wielded Nightwing's massive battle axe. Now calling himself the Final Knight, he escapes his crumbling reality and sets out into the Dark Multiverse to become one of its only real heroes. Number 5, The Batman Who Frags. Yes, we are sticking with the Dark Multiverse still, and I will for the next point too, but I promise that is not a negative, and I can prove that to you by telling you that this version of Batman is a mix with Lobo. In an attempt to gain their powers, this Batman injected himself with Zarnian DNA, Zarnians being the race that Lobo is the sole survivor of. This did totally give Batman the insane super strength and healing factor that we often attribute to Lobo, but it had the maybe expected downside of completely changing Bruce's personality as well. He became became much more aggressive, stabby, and volatile, and he also picked up one hell of a potty mouth. Batman also gained a much more similar look to Lobo as well, and I would be a liar if I said that this guy didn't look absolutely amazing. He's so cool. Unfortunately though, he isn't as cool as the real Lobo, and couldn't quite cut it when he was sent to capture the guy, instead finding himself trapped in a universe called Loboland, where he was forced to face a Lobo Justice League. Yes, it is as crazy as it sounds. Number 4, Dark Father. Okay, last dark multiverse Batman on this list, I promise. But also arguably one of the most alarming. That's because this version of Batman brought about the end of Darkseid, and in doing so, gained the evil god's abilities and even took on his appearance. He mastered the anti-life equation and controlled a massive army of para-Robins instead of the usual para-demons. He gave up the anti-life equation to his Superman, but he still went on to work with the Batman Who Laughs and invaded Earth Zero. Dark Father defeated the Teen Titans, the Titans, and Superman, which resulted in the destruction of the moon. He then built a new Apokolips inside of the core of the burnt out sun, and he kept Superman and many others imprisoned there until Batman, Wonder Woman, and Harley Quinn were able to come to the rescue, freeing Superman, who punched Dark Father into space. There he goes, look at him. Number 3, Red Sun. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say that he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batman on this list, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them, all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down the Man of Steel. So, he stole Wonder Woman, bound her with her own lasso, and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever, but alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her own lasso and remove the generator powering the lamps. Unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized like everyone else who opposed Superman, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he implanted in his own small intestine. But before he passed, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 2, Flashpoint Batman. With the loss of his son at the hands of a mugger, in the alternate Flashpoint timeline, Thomas Wayne was driven to send criminals to the afterlife as the ruthless vigilante Batman. His first victim would be Joe Chill, the very mugger who ended the life of his son. Now, originally planning to poison Joe, Thomas went the much more reasonable route of pummeling with his bare hands. This act drove his wife, Martha Wayne, into insanity, cutting a grin into her own face and becoming this timeline's version of the Joker. Thomas has a more important mission to him than his war on crime though, restoring his son's life. He meets the Flash, helps restore his powers, learns of the alternate timeline where Bruce actually lived, and assembles an alternate timeline Justice League, and together they restore the original timeline. Thomas eventually enters into the current DC timeline, and wishing for his son to stop being Batman, he teams up with Bane to completely break Bruce. But it fails. Since his introduction in Flashpoint Volume 2 Number 1 in July of 2011, Flashpoint Batman, Thomas Wayne, has been a complex, interesting, and infamously fan-loved character. And finally, in at number 1, Owlman. The crime syndicate of America hails from the strength-obsessed Earth 3, and is a twisted, evil version of the main universe Justice League of America. The Batman of this villainous league isn't a Batman at all. In fact, he isn't even Bruce Wayne. No, he is Thomas Wayne Jr., also known as Owlman. Thomas Wayne Jr. was the eldest son of the Waynes, yes, the older brother of Bruce in this world. He believed that his parents were managing their wealth poorly, and for that reason alone, Thomas decided that they needed to go. He tried to convince his younger brother Bruce to help him in this endeavor, but when the time came to do the deed, Bruce was pretty hesitant and attempted to dissuade Thomas. Perceiving this as a sign of weakness, Thomas took Bruce to the afterlife, while his butler and servant, Alfred, who would become known as the Outsider, ended the lives of their parents. Becoming the villain Owlman, Thomas asserted power, dominance, and control over the city of Gotham, forcing it to be under his control. There is a lot more to this Owlman, but what we need to know is that he, alongside the Crime Syndicate of America, could not save their world from the Monitor, and so they fled it, invading the main DC universe and bringing us the Forever Evil story, which is probably one of the most awesome stories to come out of the New 52.
Number 10. Young Justice. Earth 16 is the designated number given to the reality we see in Young Justice. Despite being an animated series, Young Justice is actually considered to be separate from the main DCAU reality, and is instead its own separate Earth. Here, Hal Jordan is Green Lantern. We first met Jordan in 2010 when the series started, but he continues to appear in the series up until its final season in 2021. This version of Hal here is one of the founding members of the Justice League. Like in the comics, he is also based in Coast City. One of the fun facts that I just find entertaining from this universe is that Hal Jordan is revealed as not liking Guy Gardner. Both he and John Stewart in this reality were very much against having Guy join the Justice League when they were considering adding new members to the roster. Also, I gotta say, I haven't watched Young Justice yet, and it keeps getting recommended to me, so I feel like I really need to watch it. If you have a favorite moment or episode, let me know, because I want to go back and watch all of it. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not tell us that you love us by clicking that like button? Seriously, it really helps us out if you do that, so if you want to, then I would like that. Number 9. Earth 5. Hal Jordan of Earth 5 hails from an interesting reality. Here, Hal Jordan is still the hero known as Green Lantern, but what else do we know about him? Not much in terms of his origins, but what we do know is that in this reality, Hal doesn't swear or use profanity, because that's just not a thing that folks do on Earth 5, gosh darn it. He ended up being pitted against 2 other Green Lanterns when he was summoned by the future evil version of Captain Atom, who is known as Monarch. Number 8. Sinister vs. Xavier. In this reality, Mr. Sinister also formed his own team of X-Men. However, Beast, being Beast even in this reality, he remained a member of Charles Xavier's aka Professor X's team. When X's team came head to head with Sinister's X-Men team over the fate of Young Mutant Storm, Xavier's X-Men seemingly won this fight. As a result, they would recruit Cyclops and Havoc from Sinister's team, who they truly believed wanted to join them. However, it turns out that Cyclops and Havoc actually have their own reasons for joining up with Xavier's team, and they perhaps are maybe not done serving Sinister just quite yet. Number 7. Creature. In Morgan Le Fay's warped reality, Hank McCoy ended up being transformed into a medieval hero known as Creature. In this world, all of the Avengers were basically imprisoned, having been warped to believe they were meant to be alive in this medieval time, despite the year also still being 1998 here. They didn't think that was weird at all, and they believed they were all members of Queen Morgan's elite group of protectors known as the Queen's Vengeance. Although I gotta be real, Creature looks like less of a hero here and more of a court jester to me. That hat. Fortunately, Scarlet Witch was able to use her power to see things more clearly and realize that the world had been altered, which is why Morgan initially tries to keep her in prison, but hey, that doesn't work. Scarlet Witch was able to use her power combined with her friend's power to return the world to normal. Also, big thanks to Wonder Man there, who Wanda basically gives power to and then everything gets set back. Number 6. Earth 12. Have you ever wondered what Beast would be like if he were a celebrity? Well, wonder no more, because this is exactly what we get to see when we venture into a version of Mimic's home reality, Earth 12. This version of Mimic, aka Calvin Rankin, hails from a world where mutants are not feared by humans, but instead are more well regarded, being treated more like famous celebrities, who humans actively want to be like. All of the heroes of that world are more celebrated than like, you know, regular people being like, you guys, you're sometimes good but sometimes bad. Having their own fans and various brands who actively want to represent them. This version of Mimic would go on to be selected as the leader of the Exiles team in issue number 1, but we'd also see a glimpse into his home reality, and among those other mutants present, would get to see Hank McCoy's Beast thriving here as well. We don't really know how it happened, but we do know that even in this reality, Hank goes from being a humanoid looking beast with oversized feet and hands to the bouncing blue beast from modern comics we've come to know and love. We can assume probably that it happened in a similar way. We also don't know like really what Beast's life is like here, but I know that Calvin and Angel in this reality like both co-founded a charity, so I'm assuming Calvin did something cool with Beast too. I don't know, maybe Beast was the one that helped him write a book. Number 5. MC2. I love the MC2 reality of Earth 982. This is the home reality for Spider-Girl, aka May Mayday Parker, the daughter of Peter Parker's Spider-Man and Mary Jane Watson. You see, in this reality, heroes were actually allowed to settle down, start families, and even, get this, retire. Alas, Beast was not quite as lucky as some others from this reality though. He ends up in a fight against Juggernaut and is really only seen in a few issues from this line of comics. I would have to assume that at some point he does retire since many younger heroes take over for those who have come before here, but we really don't see him that much, so I cannot confirm or deny this theory based on anything from the comics that I've seen. Sad, because I would actually be interested in seeing what Beast would get up to if he were allowed to settle down, have kids of his own, or retire and maybe focus on more purely scientific pursuits. I could see that too. Professor Beast, let's go. Number 4, Beast. Now with more Beast. This version of Beast hails from Earth 763. Here, Beast ended up becoming even more Beast-like than his Earth 616 version when his mutation was amplified and then unable to be reversed. Here, while Henry appeared even more Beast-like physically, he also became mentally more like a Beast himself, losing much of his smarts with the mutation also manifesting in his mind. With these changes to his life, he ended up with Wonder Man in this reality. When Wonder Man was killed in a fight against MODOK, Beast enters a rage, going completely berserk and decimating MODOK in response. MODOK would explode, seemingly killing Beast as well. However, it only seemed like Beast was killed in this reality because instead it was right before the instant of that fatal explosion that he was drafted to join the Exiles, as so happens with some Exiles members. Number 3, Dr. Henry McCoy. Honestly, I'm mainly picking this alternate version of Beast because I love his design and how he's drawn here. He makes his first and only appearance in Astonishing X-Men Ghost Boxes issue number 1. Here, the Doctor is a member of Emma Frost's X Society. This reality seems to take place in more of a turn-of-the-century style period, with calls even showing up on old-timey looking monitors that to me kind of resemble more of like a classic old-school radio. You know, the one with all the buttons and all the dials and stuff. They're also referred to as audio-visual calls as opposed to just a FaceTime or a video call. So it's kind of like turn of the century, but we got some modern technology, but it's still old, you know what I mean? Very interesting stuff. The Doctor is just as much of a genius as we're used to him being, and seems to mainly be on Emma's team because of his brilliant intellect, which honestly, fair enough. Number 2, Elderly Beast. This version of Beast comes to us from the collection of short stories and alternate worlds that are showcased in X-Men Millennial Visions from the year 2000. Here we get a glimpse into a future reality of Earth 1012. As the mutant population continues to boom, the X-Men are forced to take on new students. As they continue to get older, they do their best to keep up with the new generation of young mutants, but instead struggle to maintain a sense of authority over their rambunctious students. In Beast's case, he ends up having his denture stolen as part of a prank that's played on him by the younger students. Poor Beast, his dentures. Number 1, Dark Beast. Probably one of the most iconic alternates that Beast has ever had. At one point, I thought the Beast we currently had in modern day comics might actually be this version of Beast based off of his cruel and often unforgiving behavior as of late, but nah, I'm pretty sure the modern day Beast just, I guess, became a paranoid, power-hungry dude all on his own. Dark Beast was confirmed to be his own separate thing, and as far as I know is still decapitated, though no longer dead. He was decapitated and dead, and now he's just capitated. He's just a floating head. His head was preserved instead by Mr. Sinister and apparently kept alive. So he's alive, but he's just a head now. This version of Beast hails from the Age of Apocalypse reality of Earth 295, where he was once one of Apocalypse's geneticists, and in this world Apocalypse ends up taking over the world. Ooh. Without Xavier's guidance, Beast became a mad scientist who was willing to follow through with even the most immoral and dangerous experiments, with many mutants becoming his test subjects against their will. Pretty scary stuff.
Coming in at number 10 is Iron Man the Traitor. In one of the first ever What If comics, we get an answer to the question of what if Iron Man was a traitor? It picks up following his usual origin story with Iron Man being famously captured and forced to make the tools of his trade. Like normal, he still creates the Iron Man armor, but the change comes when instead of booting up and busting his way out, the boot up sequence takes just a bit too long, and Yinsen's sacrifice goes to waste as it doesn't buy Tony enough time like it normally would. Tony is found and restrained before he can do anything. Now that he has been found and this new weapon, the Iron Man armor is discovered, the leader of the organization that had captured Tony, Chen Lu, plants a device in Tony's arc reactor that keeps Tony alive, but that allows Chen to shut it off remotely if Tony doesn't do what they say. Crucially though, Chen also implants a communication device in Tony's skull so that Chen Lu can spy on and control Tony. Then, he lets him get discovered. Thanks to the fact that he can now control Tony, he forces him to become a hero like he would have anyways, gain the trust of the superhero community, and then learn secrets pertaining to S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony is ordered to dispatch Reed Richards and goes to complete this mission, but it's revealed that Tony has actually been recording an SOS tape by speaking incredibly slowly, and he sent that tape to Reed, who figured out he had to play it at a faster speed, and he learned of the situation that Iron Man was in. Once their fight began, Iron Man eventually got, quote, incapacitated by Reed, who in actuality helped remove the device inside of Tony's heart, giving Tony the chance to get his revenge. For a short and somewhat silly what-if story, it's actually pretty good. Number 9. Lord Iron. Earth 311 is the home to the incredibly cool story of Marvel 1602. This Earth takes a bunch of the Marvel characters we love and adapts them to the Elizabethan era, and yes, that includes an Elizabethan Iron Man. Anthony Stark, aka Lord Iron, has an armor powered by literal lightning in a bottle. No, I ain't joking. His armor was created when Anthony was captured in the Holy Land during the English-Spanish Wars and treated rather harshly by Robert David Banner, aka the Hulk of 1602. This resulted in Anthony requiring the suit to survive. But that's all backstory. Anthony is sent on a mission to hunt down Banner at the Roanoke colony in the New World with his technologically advanced suit. Now look, this suit, in comparison to other versions of Iron Man, is not the most advanced and powerful suit, obviously, but it is centuries ahead of its time, being nearly on par with the first ever Iron Man armors, only it has a super sweet lightning sword. Elizabethan Iron Man literally captured lightning in a bottle, and that says all it has to, really.
And it ate Zombie Cap. Colonel America's life before the onslaught of the zombie plague of Earth 2149 remains largely undisclosed, but it is reasonable to assume that it paralleled the experience of Captain America from 616. Aside from the evident difference in rank, the only other deviation from 616 is that Colonel America assumed the role of President of the United States, akin to his ultimate counterpart. Although his presidency was cut short before completing a full term, tragically he succumbed to the zombie infection and became part of the Zombie Galacti, only to meet a gruesome fate when his brains were violently extracted by Red Skull. Here's a fun fact: such a high percentage of US presidents have been assassinated that it is considered the deadliest job in the world. Yep, Cap isn't changing that. However, his story took an unexpected turn as he found himself transplanted into the body of T'Challa, the son of Black Panther. The circumstances surrounding this transformation and the ensuing consequences for Colonel America in his new form are yet to be fully revealed, but yeah, that's a whole load of crazy. Gotta love zombies. In its 7th Soldier Supreme. After acquiring the Infinity Stones, Gamora harnessed their power to trap the souls of the universe within the Soul Gem. To further subdue the inhabitants, she folded the universe in half, causing every soul to merge with another and giving rise to the Warp World, a pocket dimension where history was rewritten and adapted to accommodate the fused beings. Basically, like the Marvel vs. DC, but just with Marvel characters. Within Warp World, Doctor Strange and Captain America were combined, forming the enigmatic Soldier Supreme. In this altered reality, during the height of World War II, the meek Stephen Rogers volunteered for an experimental procedure to become a super soldier in the US Army, but unbeknownst to him, the scientist Morgan Erskine, who presented herself as the creator of the super soldier serum, actually employed a mystical ritual that granted Stephen enhanced physical abilities and access to potent sorcery. Following Erskine's ultimate demise at the hands of spies from the opposition, because you know you can't say that word, can't say the NA word, her true nature was discovered. Although disheartened by her methods, the military saw promise in Stephen's transformation and he assumed the mantle of Soldier Supreme. In its 6th, Roberta Mendez. Roberta Mendez on Earth 2329-1 was the wife of Alchemax operative 1940 and was forcibly exposed to the super soldier serum, transforming her into Captain America. Unaware of her dual identity, Roberta led Alchemax's Avengers. During an attack at her home by the Specialist, Roberta transformed into Captain America and defeated him, but couldn't prevent his self-death. The following day, Alchemax CEO Miguel Stone assigned the team to investigate Martin Hargood, suspected of hiring Specialist. They tracked Hargood to Latvian cuisine, where he argued with John Eisenhart, who revealed himself as the Hulk, and attacked the team when they refused to leave. The confrontation spilled outside, where they encountered the Hulk's allies, the Defenders, but yeah, this whole world is is crazy. But yeah, there you go. That's Captain America for you. Roberto Mendez. Earth 20, just a lot of numbers. Halfway through into number 5, Captain Carter. I feel like you're all gonna know this one. Captain Margaret Elizabeth Peggy Carter was a distinguished Avenger and founding member of the Illuminati, the Marvel Illuminati, YouTube, relax. Playing a crucial role in the Infinity War of 2018, she fought valiantly against Thanos and aided in his defeat during the Battle of Titan. In the aftermath, when Doctor Strange utilized the Darkhold for dreamwalking, resulting in a threat of multiversal incursion, Carter, along with the Illuminati, voted in favor of executing him to safeguard the universe. In the years that followed, Carter found herself presiding over a hearing concerning an alternate version of Doctor Strange, who was apprehended by Baron Mordo on suspicions of posing a similar danger to the reality. Before the vote could be finalized and condemn this alternate Strange to death, their headquarters was attacked by the Scarlet Witch, who ended up killing Carter with her own shield and, you know, pulled a science class and kind of just severed her torso from her legs. Yeah, very confusing considering how I'm pretty sure Cap has actually caught that multiple times, but I guess it wasn't being thrown by magic, so yeah. And at 4, Commander A. In an alternate future of Earth 1183-1, Commander A, a genetically enhanced version of Captain America named Kyoshi Morales, was called upon by the Contemplator alongside 4 other Captain Americas from different time periods. They were summoned because someone was erasing Captain Americas across the multiverse, a dangerous act that would unleash an entropic wave leading to the destruction of all realities. Commander A and his fellow Captain Americas were transported to the 21st century America, the time and place where the erasures were occurring, and together they confronted and fought against forces behind the erasing of Americas, facing off against the character known as Americommand, which is just lazy naming. Come on, Americommand? Dude, that's just the government. Getting close to the end into number 3, the Captain. Leaving a pineapple on his doorstep for Ted Mosby, oh wait, sorry, wrong Captain, my bad. In the midst of the Battleworld conflict, Stephen engaged in a brutal confrontation with the Wolverine clan, ultimately emerging victorious. Arcade, however, taunted Stephen, provoking his wrath. In a swift act of retaliation, Stephen trapped Arcade within the formidable jaws of the Devil Dinosaur. However, his actions attracted the attention of God Emperor Doom and Sheriff Strange, who summoned him for judgment. If you can't tell, this world is kinda nuts. Stephen pleaded on behalf of Steve, revealing that in order to secure Bucky's freedom, Steve had been tasked with venturing into the Greenland domain and assassinating the Red King. Sent on this mission, Steve encountered ferocious monsters, but was saved from their onslaught by Hulk. It's a mess, okay? Basically, I'm pretty sure this one is just, I forget what age it was. I feel like it's a dinosaur one, okay? I think it is. Just read it if you really want to know, because I can't explain it. It's so confusing. Penultimately, in at number 2, Vamp Cap. Steven Rogers of Earth 3931 was a member of the Avengers, but became a vampire during World War II after being infected by Baron Blood. This transformation granted him new powers, and he used this newfound ability to turn his fellow heroes into enslaved minions. Gotta love America. The Exiles, a team tasked with fixing alternate realities, encountered Rogers and faced a vampirized Sunfire, who had been influenced by him. One by one, the Exiles team members were killed, and Rogers himself was decapitated by Mimic using Wolverine's claws. Despite this seemingly fatal blow, Rogers miraculously survived by reattaching his head to his body. Eventually, Sunfire was cured of her vampirism and retaliated, annihilating Rogers and the remnants of his team. But yeah, Vampire Captain. Oh my god. And finally, in at number 1, Captain Americat. Not even joking. Captain America has a remarkable ability to adapt to different realities within the multiverse, even in the more eccentric corners of it. Here we go. Take for instance the Earth of Spider-Ham, where Steve Rogers is a feline counterpart known as Steve Mouser or Captain Americat. While his escapades may possess a more lighthearted and whimsical tone compared to other versions of Cap because it's a freaking Earth of animals, in this alternate universe, he fearlessly protects his world with feline grace and is still a Captain America but as a cat. But he does have catnip craving villains, which is just the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever talked about. I've talked about a turtle who has a connection to the Speed Force, but Captain America as a goddamn cat? Man, no, okay? Cats are Red Skull. It's as simple as that. Cats are always trying to kill you. So I don't know why they made him a cat, but I guess it was for the pun. Captain Ameridog doesn't really roll off the tongue as well. And at 10, Ian Rogers. When Steve Rogers got trapped in Dimension Z, he rescued a baby boy while he was trapped there. Since time moves faster in Dimension Z, he ended up raising that boy for over 10 years. Sharon Carter ended up raising him for the remainder of his childhood when she got trapped in Dimension Z after going there to rescue Steve, but the boy was the son of Armin Zola, but saw Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter as his parents. His birth name was Leopold Zola, but he goes by Ian Rogers, the true name that his father gave him. By the time he left Dimension Z, he was a full-grown adult. Then he took on the name Nomad and partnered with Sam Rogers, but he does at one point become Captain America as well, I think. And even if he doesn't, he's basically gay. He's like Cap's adoptive son, so you know what? It's like Patriot adjacent. And at 9, Super Soldier. Super Soldier is fairly evidently, well, I say evidently, but I guess you wouldn't really know that. It's actually a combination of Clark Kent and Steve Rogers. First being introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3 from 1996, during World War II, government scientists were working on a super soldier formula that would transform a man into much more, into some sort of human weapon using cellular samples of an alien corpse. Clark Kent volunteers for the super soldier program and they administer the formula, as well as a good chunk of solar radiation. This mixture gave Clark Kent incredible abilities, including all those of Captain America and Superman. Super strength, heat vision, flight. Now known as Super Soldier, Kent wields the Superman logo as his shield. In March of 1942, Super Soldier fought Ultra Metallo, a robot sent by Lex Luthor to aid Germany in winning the war by killing Clark, but the fight started in Washington, D.C. and ended above the northern Atlantic Ocean, when Clark sacrificed himself to take down the robot, sinking them both into the icy depths. Jimmy Olsen was one of the few witnesses of this event and instead reported that Super Soldier had retired after America had declared that the war was won. 50 years later, the body was thawed out in JLA number 4, that stands for Judgment League Avengers, and Clark joined the Judgment League Avengers as its leader.
Number 8, Justice League of Assassins. Of course, with the Justice League of Assassins, they were pretty short-lived, appearing in only a single issue where, well, they kinda died, despite being, I would assume, amazing assassins. However, that being said, I think these are characters who ultimately look really cool when it comes to their design, which is why I'm including them here. And I'm sure, you know, before this moment, although we don't get to see much of them, they were all pretty bad. Included among their ranks was their own Green Lantern, who appears to be somewhat cybernetic in terms of his abilities and his look, instead of having just a straight up Green Lantern power ring. Now this might explain why they didn't make it out alive past their first appearance in the Rebirth Superman issue number 15 from 2017. The Justice League of Assassins hail from Earth number 14. Hopefully we get to see more of Earth number 14 at some point. Number 7, Earth 33. Another version of Green Lantern that I find interesting, along with the world and team he hails from, is a Green Lantern of Earth 33. We don't know his name, but we know his powers are innately magic. He has only made one appearance in Countdown to Adventure issue number 3, but he comes from a really cool team from his Earth known as the League of Shamans. On Earth 33, their version of the Justice League are basically all magic users. The Green Lantern, while magic, still has a Green Lantern ring and is supposedly also part of a version of the core from this reality. Whether the ring is also magic based remains to be completely confirmed here, but it does seem to be implied, at least to me, that Green Lanterns in this world were also based in the world of cosmic magic. At least, that's what it seems to me.
And at 6, Nova. Star-Lord and his partner Gamora, both of Earth 94241, were a daring duo with a shared mission to locate the elusive Infinity Stones. Their first successful heist involved stealing the Space Stone from the devastated Nova HQ, which had fallen victim to the Annihilation Wave. Their triumph was short-lived, as they found themselves pursued by the relentless Bacchian clan. In a surprising turn of events, Star-Lord managed to strike a deal with Eve Bacchian, convincing her to purchase the Space Stone in exchange for 3 coveted Nova Stars. Sounds like I'm playing Mario Party. Discovering that their goals were aligned, both parties seeking to rid the universe of the Annihilation Wave as well, the Bacchians allowed Star-Lord and Gamora to join their quest in search of the remaining stones. During their perilous journey, a treacherous betrayal unfolded when their supposed ally Thanos seized the Infinity Stones that they had acquired, and then in the ensuing chaos, a colossal insectoid threat was unleashed, which is pretty freaking nuts and honestly kind of epic. Why would you trust Thanos though? I guess it's an alternate universe, so oh well. Halfway through into number 5, Super Mario. Now this one is kind of a joke, yes, but since Mario was voiced by Chris Pratt in the Super Mario Bros. Movie, technically that makes Mario a Star-Lord variant, right? I mean, a load of Mario games also revolve around stars or include them as some form of currency or whatever the case may be. Super Mario Galaxy revolved around stars quite literally. I mean, like, it was in space. Galaxy kinda needs stars in a galaxy. Luna, who's a character in the series, is a star. Rosalina has the star wand. Mario's main goal in Mario Party is to collect stars, which are highly coveted. He's a Lord of Stars, and given that he's voiced by Chris Pratt, and when in contact with a superstar, Mario gains invulnerability and what is basically celestial adjacent powers, or some would say celestial descendant powers. Yeah, I'm gonna count Super Mario as a Star-Lord variant, okay? And if you want to get mad at me for it, go right ahead. I'm sure plenty of you want to give me a piece of your mind already anyway. In it for Cyborg. After the events on Aveline 4, where Star-Lord's actions inadvertently caused the loss of 350,000 lives while saving millions of others, he couldn't escape the weight of the collateral damage that he had caused. Faced with the gravity of his actions, he made the difficult decision to turn himself in, along with the Fallen One, to the Nova Corps for judgment. The public's opinion of Quill was divided, but he took responsibility for the tragedy. Subsequently, both Star-Lord and the Fallen One had found themselves imprisoned on the notorious intergalactic penitentiary known as the Kiln. It was during this time of confinement that Peter made a significant choice. He opted to undergo his first cybernetic implant, a symbolic gesture of distancing himself from his own humanity, because I mean that's what put him in there in the first place, really. While incarcerated, Peter formed an alliance with Chalk, Gladiator, and Thanos, fearing the immense power of the enigmatic figure known as the Maker. They shared crucial information about her background with Thanos and sought his aid, but the Mad Titan ultimately walked away. But still, he became a cyborg, and that's pretty dope, because, you know, part robot people are awesome, a la Power Rangers Red Ranger. You know, if you know, you know. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Old Man Quill. Prior to Red Skull's rise to power and the downfall of the United States, Star-Lord assumed the role of Emperor within the Spartax Empire. During his time, he entered into a union with Lyssa, who gave birth to their 2 children, Meredith and Jason. Though his responsibilities as Emperor prevented him from joining the Guardians on a critical mission that led to Groot's demise, the decision strained his relationship with the rest of the team. In the aftermath of the rebellion and the subsequent years as Emperor, Star-Lord remained unaware of the events unfolding on Earth. However, everything changed when the colossal Church of Truth launched a brutal assault on his planet, resulting in the tragic loss of his family. So, consumed by grief and despair, Quill lived in seclusion for years, cutting off from the Guardians and the wider universe. Then, a message arrived from the dying Guardians, revealing that Star-Lord represented the last hope to defeat the Church. And I mean, like, the one that had attacked his planet, not, like, Cavalry Baptist, you know. But ultimately, in at number 2, Age of Ultron. Star-Lord of Earth 26111 is a valiant member of the Defenders who was enlisted by Tony Stark to safeguard the world from the relentless menace posed by Morgan Le Fay. Alongside his fellow Defenders, he engaged in a fierce battle with Wolverine and the Invisible Woman from an alternate reality, mistakenly believing them to be Skrull imposters. As Tony Stark interrogated the displaced visitors, tragedy struck when Morgan Le Fay launched a devastating assault on New York City. Star-Lord and his fellow Defenders valiantly confronted the Sorceress and her formidable forces. However, their heroic efforts came to a tragic end when Morgan Le Fay orchestrated the cataclysmic nuclear explosion caused by colliding 2 of Stark's helicarriers. So, I mean, yeah, any old man story you know is gonna be messed up. Old Man Logan, Maestro, Spider-Man Reign. And finally, in at number 1, Will Stronghold. That's right, I found a way to shoehorn Sky High into this list, okay? Will Stronghold is the main protagonist and central character of the Disney Channel original movie Sky High. As the offspring of 2 esteemed superheroes, the Commander and Jetstream, Will carries the weight of their legacy on his shoulders. Inheriting his father's incredible strength and his mother's ability to soar through the skies, Will proved to be quite the formidable student at Sky High. But he doesn't start off with powers. So he's the only kid at a school full of the children of superheroes and villains alike to not have any superpowers, despite having 2 superhero parents who are literally the most famous people on the planet. But over time, Will sheds his shyness and timidness, and he grows more confident and actually gains his powers. Through his journey, he gains popularity as well, but also earns the respect and admiration of his fellow students and even teachers. Will's evolution allows him to stand as a true hero, carving his own path and giving his friends hope, who, by the way, one of them is Danielle Panabaker, who plays Killer Frost on The Flash, but she was playing Poison Ivy in this movie. But the reason I have Will on this list is because the legacy that he's trying to uphold is that of the Commander played by Kurt Russell, who also played Ego, meaning that within the Marvel multiverse, Will Stronghold is a variant of Star-Lord. You're welcome. I had to do it, okay? I had to. It's true. Will Stronghold is Star-Lord confirmed.
Kicking off the list at number 10 is Spider-Man Punisher. Yes, I am sort of cheating for this one. On Earth 71928, location of the What If Peter Parker Became the Punisher story, Peter Parker, well, becomes the Punisher. It's in the title. On the night Uncle Ben's life was drawn to a close, instead of following the classic story, Peter caught and dispatched the killer using the same weapon that took his uncle's life. From that moment, Peter tried to avoid going full murderous Punisher at first, but having taken the first step and knowing how much more permanent of a solution it is to just take them out, he went full force into that lifestyle. He carried the iron that took Uncle Ben's life, as well as a large assortment of other weaponry, including his web shooters with multiple different types of ammunition that allowed him to take down the Sinister Six with ease, and he was even able to save Gwen Stacy. So technically, this Punisher was not only better than Punisher, but also a more effective crime fighter than Spider-Man himself, in a way. Number 9, Punisher 2099. In the far-flung future of the year 2099, Frank Castle was long gone. So, Jake Gallows took up the fight. Jake was an officer of the Public Eye Police Force. In an attack ordered by Kron Stone, the Venom of 2099, Jake lost his mother, brother, and sister-in-law, while also being gravely injured himself. Being inspired by the war journals of Frank Castle, after his recovery, Jake became the new Punisher, taking up the crusade on crime after getting his revenge on Venom. Jake specifically sought out justice for the poor, using his 2099 technology alongside modern and futuristic weaponry to operate as a vigilante before serving as Victor Von Doom's Minister of Punishment. You'll see him most recently in the recent Savage Avengers comics, but no spoilers, so sorry. Number 8, Robin King. Probably the most depraved, psychotic, and disturbing of the Batman Who Laughs posse would have to be the Robin King. Instead of becoming Batman, this young Bruce Wayne lost his parents just like every other, only it was by his own hand. This Bruce was depraved basically from birth, so much so that it even scared his version of Alfred Pennyworth, who still continued to protect the young Wayne. After the passing of Joe Chill and Bruce's parents, the young fella found that he felt mainly cheer from all that altercation. He was inspired by a robin singing and how the bird is known for taking over the nests of other birds. Under that ideology, he began to put together an arsenal and a utility belt, which he would then use to take out police officer James Gordon and Alfred once they were able to prove that Bruce was responsible for the passing of his own parents. Robin King then stuffed the Flash's mom inside Barry's ring, he took out the Arcane family and obtained the Rot, he somehow managed to take out Swamp Thing, and he got away with it all because everyone thought he was just some kid. This guy even obtained and then modified the anti-life equation, a manhunt consisting of Adam Strange, Balloon Buster, Enemy Ace, Firestorm, Hawkgirl, and Hawkman all fell to this Robin King before he was finally recruited by the Batman Who Laughs, and he even posed some resistance to that guy. All this from an untrained Bruce Wayne. It's too much. Number 7, Dawnbreaker. Of all the Dark Knights recently introduced in Dark Knight's Metal, aside from their leader, the Dawnbreaker stands among the others as one of the most creative and possibly terrifying combinations. This blending of Bruce Wayne with Green Lantern, while based on two heroes, is definitely not a good guy. After Bruce Wayne's tragic loss of his parents, the Green Lantern ring comes to him and grants him the powers of a Green Lantern, right there in the alley. Now, if you know Batman, you'll know that he has likely one of the strongest wills on Earth, even though that's not really talked about. So strong, in fact, that it allows him to overpower the programming of the Green Lantern ring and do things that Green Lanterns are not supposed to do, like using his monstrous hard-light constructs to take down criminals permanently, or like taking out the whole Green Lantern Corps and the Guardians of the Universe. Stuff like that. He is a crazy powerful version of Batman, and I think it would be really cool if someone could put him on the big screen, in a sort of superhero horror movie, or something like that. Number 6, The Drowned. Bryce Wayne was the Batwoman of the Dark Multiverse Earth 11, and this vigilante had a romantic relationship with a certain Sylvester Kyle. When Kyle lost his life to rogue metahumans, it flicked a switch inside of Bryce, and she decided to systematically take down every every single metahuman she could find. The craziest thing is that she did just that, wiping out every single metahuman who walked on land. But Bryce didn't think about the metahumans of the sea. Just 18 months after taking out the last land-based metahuman, Aqua Woman and the Atlanteans revealed themselves and returned to the surface from years of self-imposed exile. While they came in peace, Bryce had such a mistrust of anyone, especially these Atlanteans that were obviously also metahumans. When peace talks devolved to an all-out war, Bryce modified her human form with biochemical augmentations like the ability to control water, breathing underwater, healing faster, and bolstering her muscular, skeletal, and bodily tissue density. She gave herself a kind of dark hydrokinesis which could corrupt those fighting against her into ravenous sea beasts under her command, and designed her own army of hybridized sea creatures called Dead Water, all of which was bolstered up by the trident that she pried from the cold hands of a completely decimated Aqua Woman. She then drowned the world, and it was then that she was contacted by the Batman Who Laughs. Number 5. Cyborg Batman. Yes, there is a Batman-Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. In this world, this evil Batman cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard, and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce like Alfred used to do. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went kinda mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all of the villains and then all of the heroes, and even took over Batman's own body since it didn't believe that he could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was totally cool with it. Number 4. Devastator. On alternate Earth -1, Batman and Superman were pals and everything was dandy. Until one day Superman changed and rampaged, turning on humanity. Superman took out almost everyone, and Batman tried his best to help bring his friend back. But once Superman took out Lois Lane and then cut off Batman's arm, there was really no going back from that point. Batman decided to inject himself with the Doomsday virus, turning him into the Devastator, powering him up enough to take out Superman but also making him lose all sympathy. He still retains all the knowledge of Bruce Wayne plus the fighting skill, and he acts as the muscle for the Dark Knights. Truly a monstrous and terrifying Batman. Number 3. Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. Well, in the Dark Multiverse, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she never expected was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected, and so, assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the Dark Multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, sure, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he does finally return. The whole story is pretty tragic, but that also makes it one of the best ones to come out of the Dark Multiverse, in my opinion. Number 2. The Batman Who Laughs. The Batman Who Laughs is arguably one of the most dangerous versions of Batman who has ever lived, other than Batman himself. If you don't know yet, he is a Dark Multiverse version of Batman who took down the Joker, but inadvertently infected himself with a strain of Joker toxin. The resulting transformation turns this version of Bruce Wayne into an amalgamation of Joker and Batman. All the intelligence and resourcefulness and martial skill of Batman mixed with the buck-wild, psychotic, murderous mind of the Joker. He is pure chaos and destruction, and he lays waste to his own Bat family and the whole whole Justice League. He has a pack of Jokerized Robins, and he is the leader of the Dark Knights. He is also a lieutenant of the Dark God Barbados, and he convinced Perpetua, the original creator of the multiverse, to choose him as her lieutenant, eventually acquiring cosmic power and becoming an even bigger threat than even Perpetua herself. And finally, in at number 1, it's Saint Batman. As some of you may know, when Bane broke the back of Bruce Wayne in the Batman Nightfall storyline, Bruce was briefly replaced as the Dark Knight in favor of John Paul Valley, otherwise known as the somewhat extreme crime fighter Azrael. Eventually, the status quo was returned and Bruce took the mantle of Batman back, but as you know, in the Dark Multiverse, everything can and will happen, and so of course, we see the dark outcome of what would happen if Bruce never got to take back his cowl. In the Dark Multiverse version of Batman Nightfall, John Paul Valley doesn't return the mantle, and instead, believing himself to be the best successor to the Batman name, he defeats Bruce Wayne and the entire Bat family. Over the next 30 years, John Paul, now going by Saint Batman, has destroyed and rebuilt the city of Gotham. He stripped Bruce of his arms and legs and keeps Bruce on life support, just trying to get Bruce to admit that John Paul was the right choice for the role of Batman. Unfortunately, Saint Batman had crossed the wrong people, and he suffered a pretty brutal defeat at the hands of Lady Shiva, the son of Bane, and a restored cyborg Batman.
Number 10. Symbiote Beast. In the world of the evil Codex's home reality, Earth 1051, Beast himself seems to become one with a symbiote. If you aren't familiar with Codex of Earth 1051, let me update you on that. He's basically the evil version of Dylan Brock, who, in that reality, grew up with his mother alive as opposed to his father. He ends up ruling the world as the villain Codex after falling prey to Null's dark whisperings, becoming manipulated by him until his 616 counterpart and the 616 Eddie Brock are able to set him free. Beast, as a member of the X-Men, seems to have acquired his own symbiote and was one of the few heroes who was apparently left to stand up against Codex. But ultimately, he and of course the mutant team, the X-Men, failed. We only see this version of Beast in one issue, or at least that's all we've seen of him so far, but I really love this symbiote design for him. I think it looks super cool, hence why I wanted to start off this list with Symbiote Beast. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that thumbs up? It really does help us out, and it feeds the algorithm. Feed the algorithm! Sometimes we must. Number 9. Earth A. Everyone gets sued, left, right, and center when it comes to Earth A. Oh boy. For those who are not familiar with this reality and its inhabitants, it was a world where most people did not actually have superpowers. It is also known by its designated number of Earth 721. Here, a scientist created a device that would allow the people of the Earth A reality to travel to Earth 616, so they might go on vacation living the life of their superhero counterparts on this Earth. If you've heard about Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, getting romantic with Juggernaut, aka Kane Marco, this was actually later revealed to have not actually been Jen, but instead her impersonator from Earth A. That's how we made sense of that weird thing that happened, because it was a weird thing. As a result of many heroes being impersonated by their Earth A counterparts, there were a lot of lawsuits as a result of that revelation. Beast of Earth 616 was one of the many who attempted to sue his Earth A counterpart, who did in fact, of course, impersonate him. Beast was hoping to sue the Henry McCoy of Earth 712 for any and all scientific discoveries he'd made while disguised as his 616 counterpart.
Number 8. Exiles. One of the most fun things about Tony is that, well, all you need is one story to take a man with the intelligence, wealth, and power of Tony Stark and make him unbothered by any kind of sense of morality. When you do that, what you get is terrifying. That's a man who can bring the world to its knees but has the sense to not let them know it and then be begged to take charge. And that's exactly what happened with the Tony Stark of Earth 42777. This incredibly evil Iron Man concocted a massive plan. Tony acquired every world conglomerate, he organized a mutant war against humanity, and then defeated their leader, Magneto, who he secretly supported, in order to be held up as a savior. He created a worldwide famine the likes of which has never been seen before, and then invented the cures and vaccines to fix it. And all of that together got him elected president. He developed weather controlling technologies to cause biblical level natural disasters in Europe and Asia, having them beg for help to the point of giving up control to Tony. Central America and our very own Canada had economic down spirals that brought them into Tony's control as well. Tony then made a deal with Dr. Doom, who then attacked the Capitol and took out all the other Democratic leaders in America. Then, Tony turned on him too, receiving a blast to the face that left him disfigured as he took the life of the Latvian ruler. He's de-lifed the Hulk. This Tony appearing in Exiles issue number 23 is one of the coolest ones out there, but also one of the scariest. Number 7. Ultimate Iron Man. The Antonio Stark of Earth 1610, or the Ultimate Universe, has basically become part man, part machine, being able to project his mind into computers and androids, allowing him to be pretty much nigh unkillable. This was proven when the Master, Reed Richards, seemingly brought Tony's demise, but in actuality, he became a non-physical entity which could manifest itself via computer systems. When actually physically inhabiting an Iron Man armor, he gains the usual Iron Man abilities and capabilities. He's also got nanites in his bloodstream that he uses to control his suit, as well as open locks, defuse boom booms, and interact with all forms of tech. He eventually had his mind and body altered by an Infinity Gem to allow him to physically and mentally interact with pretty much any computer ever. This Ultimate Universe Iron Man, like quite a few of the other Ultimate Universe characters, pretty ultimate. Number 6. Iron Goblin. The Spider Island story, taking place on the alternate Earth of Earth 1991, basically saw the city of New York taken over by the Spider Queen, who infected millions of people, including heroes, turning them into monstrous spider people. Agent Venom of the Resistance began using other monster transforming techniques to cure heroes of the spider monster virus. This includes injecting the Hulk with the Lizard Serum, using the God Stone to turn Captain America into a werewolf, and Captain Marvel was turned into a living vampire. For Iron Man though, he was sprayed with Norman Osborn's Goblin formula. This gave Tony Stark super strength, speed, stamina, durability, agility, reflexes, and a regenerative healing factor. But of course, this was combined with all the technology of the Iron Man suit. Unfortunately, the Goblin Serum famously also has the side effect of making people maniacal, paranoid, irrational, and illogical. Not wanting to go fully insane though, and to make up for his crimes as an arms dealer, the Goblin Iron Man wielded the Ebony Blade and sacrificed himself to save the Resistance. It was actually very awesome. Number 5. Iron Hammer. In the 2018 Infinity Wars story, a warped together world was created by Gamora using the power of the Infinity Stones and Gauntlet. Essentially, Gamora folded the universe, and that molded souls with one another, creating amalgamated heroes. And for this spot, we're talking about the amalgamation of Iron Man and the God of Thunder, Thor. Stark, Odin's son, is an awesome version of Iron Man and Thor that enjoys virtual immortality thanks to his Asgardian physiology, along with superhuman strength and endurance. His hammer, Mjolnir Iron, which I know is a stupid name, has all the same powers as the regular Mjolnir, but it also grants Stark his armor, which is now a mystical suit of Asgardian armor. Since both Thor and Tony kind of have daddy issues, this version of the mix has their father, Howard Odin, playing a huge part in the story too. It's pretty damn awesome and you should check it out. Number 4. Iron Maniac. Coming at us from the alternate Earth 5012, Iron Maniac shows readers what a totally evil version of Tony Stark would look like, other than the Exiles one and any other evil version, I guess. The Tony Stark from this war-torn version of the Marvel Universe has done some truly horrible things following the loss of so many of his fellow heroes at the hands of the villain Titanus. Using a really cool armor that also somewhat resembles Dr. Doom's armor, the Iron Maniac went against the Fantastic Four and even took the life of Johnny Blaze in his native universe. His advanced armor repels magical attacks as well as generates a neural dampening field that mitigates telepathic and telekinetic attacks to some degree, which really helped him out to be absolutely terrible. Reed Richards of Earth 5012 eventually found a way to send this Tony Stark to the 616 universe, where he faced the 616 Fantastic Four and eventually the New Avengers, showing just how powerful this evil Iron Man actually is and making us thank our stars that normal Tony Stark is a good guy. Number 3. Steel Corpse. In Marvel's Age of X universe, the X-Men never existed to represent all the good that mutants can do, and as a result of that, the mutant population had become enemy number 1 to the human race. In response to this, the mutant Magneto used his powers to literally steal buildings from New York and form Fortress X, a safe haven for mutant kind. This led directly to the creation of a team of non-mutant heroes organized by General Frank Castle and led by a much more unlikable Captain America to hunt down this resistance of mutants. One member of this team team was a version of Iron Man named Steel Corpse. This Iron Man had become infected by a technological virus that fused him with his armor. Inside the armor, Iron Man has been slowly digested by the suit over the decades since he was trapped inside. The worst part is that this group of Avengers eventually decided that they aren't going to attack the mutants who are just trying to survive, so the government takes control of Steel Corpse and forces the suit to attack. It's twisted, it's sick, and it's absolutely terrifying to imagine being slowly consumed by a suit of armor you can literally never leave and apparently cannot control. Number 2. Iron Lantern. The Amalgam Universe combined the world's two biggest comic book companies, DC and Marvel Comics, during a time of utmost peace and prosperity. Just kidding, this was in the 90s. This crazy event pitted popular characters from both sides against each other and even fused some characters together. One incredibly cool amalgamation would be between Iron Man and Green Lantern. Harold Stark, or Hal for short, was the founder of Stark Aircraft, and while test flying a prototype aircraft, it suddenly took off on its own and crashed at the site of another crashed alien spaceship. The crash of Hal Stark's craft left shards of metal in Stark's chest, which would have ended his life if he hadn't met the dying alien Roman Sur, and using the suspiciously lantern-shaped alien battery, built a suit of armor. This armor not only kept him alive, but due to the advanced alien tech, it gave him the ability to create green, solid energy constructs, fire plasma bolts, fly at speeds beyond the speed of light, time travel, it granted him almost unlimited telepathic powers, translation of virtually any language, force field generation, and the ever-classic superhuman strength and durability. Stark became one of the most overpowered heroes around, and an Iron Man Green Lantern combo was not something that I knew that I needed, but I'm glad I have it. And finally, in at number 1, it's Robert Downey Jr. Nothing can really stand up to the closest thing we got to a real Iron Man. Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark was the whole groundwork MCU, and his character endured for years, with aspects of his characterization even influencing comic Tony Stark to a degree. Taking aspects of the original character and adding some realism and a really likable performance made for a version of Iron Man that boosted up not only the comic book character's popularity, but through the MCU, it boosted up the popularity of comic books in general, and we will always celebrate that. Being in a world that is a bit more grounded and relatable to our own, this Iron Man doesn't have as complex of a story, nor is he more powerful, but he is more than impressive enough without that. Not to mention, he was the one to actually defeat Thanos in the end. His send-off from the MCU affected people who don't even read comic books, and I think that says a lot. And I can't read Iron Man in comics anymore without hearing Robert Downey Jr.'s voice. He is Iron Man.
Number 10. Ben Grimm. There are so many excellent alternate versions of Thor to highlight from the Thor Corps, but I decided to go with the version I don't believe I have ever talked about on this channel. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I have. We're talking about Benjamin Grimm. He was not just a member of the Thor Corps, Emperor God Doom's enforcers of justice and peace on Battleworld, but is also a member of the Fantastic Thors. That's right, this alternate version of the Fantastic Four all became Thors, although it's never established as to how this happened for them. I just think the idea of Ben Grimm becoming Thor is pretty cool. I mean, Ben is already a super strong character, so imagine combining him with the sheer godly power as well of Thor. The Thor Corps in general are also just insane. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider clicking that subscribe button? It's good for us, it's good for you, it's good for everyone. Number 9. Adam Aziz. Like Jane Foster, Adam Aziz became Thor briefly when the hammer presented itself to him. However, he didn't last nearly as long as other mortals have in the role. Definitely not as long as Jane Foster. This is because the hammer presented itself to him when it was broken during Donny Cates' recent Thor run. It wasn't that Adam was worthy, it was that the hammer needed to be fixed. He asked Thor before returning Mjolnir to him if he could use it to fly once high up in the sky like he and the other heroes so often do. Thor gave him permission, and afterwards he returned the hammer, giving Thor some advice on how he might fix it, based on Adam's own experience. The good old IT crowd fix. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Number 8. Nocturne. Nocturne isn't really an alternate version of Nightcrawler. She's actually the daughter of an alternate reality version of Nightcrawler, but honestly, she outshines her daddy, so we're talking about her instead. Nocturne, who eventually ended up in Earth 616, came from the alternate reality of Earth 2182, and is the daughter of both Nightcrawler and, surprisingly enough, the Scarlet Witch. She was raised under the watchful eye of her father, who she lived with at Charles Xavier's school. school. Her mother stayed as an Avenger but remained romantically involved with Nightcrawler, but Nocturne quickly moved up the ranks to become an X-Man when she was old enough and eventually was able to fight at the side of her father on a team of X-Men led by Wolverine, which included Nightcrawler, Thunderbird, Kitty Pryde, Phoenix Force, and Armageddon. After moving to Earth 616, she sees the main Nightcrawler as a father figure, and they have become pretty close friends. Now, just like him, Nocturne has blue fur, 3 fingers on each hand, 2 toes per foot, and a prehensile tail, although her tail is retractable, which is kinda weird. Like her father, she's extremely athletic and is a skilled fighter. She's able to cling to any surface by her hands and feet, but she can't teleport like her Poppy. Instead, Nocturne has the ability to possess someone for up to 12 hours, and then gain access to that person's abilities and memories. She also has superhuman agility, low-level telepathy, and can release concussive bolts of energy called Hex Bolts, kinda like her mom. Number 7. Citizen V. In the Darkhold Blade story, a dark magic wave called the V-Wave was unleashed by Deacon Frost when he offered himself as host to the ancient blood demon La Magra. The V-Wave turned billions of humans into vampires, but it also affected superhumans, randomly converting them into either humans or vampires. On Krakoa, almost every mutant that was turned into a human was completely decimated by the ones that were turned into vampires, with the exception of just Nightcrawler, who managed to teleport away before he was turned into a human. Kurt eventually made his way back to the United States of America and formed the last Avengers with the Prowler and Silver Sable, taking up the mantle of Citizen V. In a world dominated by vampires, Citizen V and his Avengers tried to locate a cure for vampirism, which unfortunately for Citizen V led to his untimely demise at the hands of the Daywalker Blade. But up until then, he was really freaking cool. Number 6. X2. If you ever watched the second ever live action X-Men movie, fittingly titled X2, then you probably remember the absolutely awesome opening scene, which was basically just a showcase of Nightcrawler and his powers. Played magnificently by Alan Cumming, this Nightcrawler is brainwashed into attempting an attack on the President of the United States, and the scene basically sees him take on the entire Secret Service, and I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Like, I actually got some right here. Outside of that scene though, Nightcrawler shares much of the same history with the comic book counterpart. One major difference between the comic book Nightcrawler and his film counterpart is that he wears ordinary civilian clothing as opposed to an X-Men uniform, because he's not actually a member of the X-Men in the film, just an ally of the team. Some other differences would be that he has blue flesh instead of blue fur, his skin is also decorated by angelic symbols to reflect his religious nature, and I guess his puff of smoke is more blue than purple, but who cares? That opening scene sold me immediately on the character of Nightcrawler, and for that, I thank it. Number 5. Age of Apocalypse. In the Age of Apocalypse, Nightcrawler is very similar to his Earth 616 counterpart, except he's an incredibly capable warrior brandishing dual blades at all times, and he isn't really as lovable as he would be normally. This Nightcrawler hates the church, having had a traumatic experience when he was much younger, which is a far cry from the original. Nightcrawler in this universe is also close to his mother, Mystique, which is why he gladly takes on the Darkhold last name. This Nightcrawler believes his biological father is actually Sabretooth, since Mystique stated that she had gone to the trouble of finding a father with fur when Nightcrawler complains that he was cold. What's really interesting though is that this version of Nightcrawler actually chooses to remain in the 616 reality and joins up with X-Force. But being on Earth 616, he does get mistaken for the original Nightcrawler, which he does not appreciate. Like, at one point he pushed Kitty Pryde for mistaking him for a resurrected Nightcrawler. While working with X-Force, he has successfully took out his reality's Blob by teleporting a shark into his stomach, which devoured Blob from the inside out, and he also took out Iceman from the Age of Apocalypse reality, where the weakened Iceman begged for forgiveness before being thrown into an incinerator, which is a pretty fast way to go, I guess. He has also made several unsuccessful attempts on Dark Beast's life, but that never really went anywhere. In March 2013's Extermination crossover, this focused on Nightcrawler's attempt to get back to his home universe, but unfortunately, during the event, the Age of Apocalypse reality was destroyed alongside this version of Nightcrawler. Number 4. Earth X. Okay, so this one to me is really strange. In the Earth X reality, where the entire population was given superpowers thanks to the release of Terrigen Mists, Nightcrawler was a part of Excalibur like he is in the normal universe. During a fight with Grey Gargoyle, he was forced to teleport away to a random village, but strangely found himself turned back into just a regular old dude with no powers, and for that he was attacked by the villagers who are now mutated. Eventually he was visited by the demon Mephisto in disguise. Mephisto convinced Kurt that everyone hated him for being a freak and convinced Nightcrawler to want revenge. Under that direction, Mephisto brought Nightcrawler to Limbo, transformed him to appear as Belasco, and clouded his memory to lead him to believe that he really was the Belasco in Dante's Inferno. He was then put in suspended animation and frozen in ice. Later on, in a fight with Captain America and Captain Marvel, Mephisto ended up causing Captain America to accidentally send the frozen Belasco Nightcrawler into the past, where he essentially did the same things that Belasco is known for in the regular continuity. Earth X is amazing, but I'd be kinda lying if I said it wasn't incredibly confusing at times and deep, and does a lot of weird things just like this. Belasco Nightcrawler eventually became a good guy and one of the key figures in deciding life or death on Earth 9997. Number 3, Thor Core. Okay, so this version of a Nightcrawler isn't really around for any significant amount of time, but the idea of him is just so cool to me, and I kinda want more of it. During 2015 Secret War event, when Dr. Doom created Battleworld, he pulled together an entire army of alternate reality versions of Thor to act as his own personal police force. This Thor Core was incredibly powerful and had some of the coolest spliced together versions of Thor out there, and one of them just happened to be Nightcrawler, wielding the ancient Asgardian Mjolnir. Kurt Wagner was one of the Thor Core members dispatched to Arcadia after Baroness She-Hulk resisted arrest and fled in A-Force number 3 in 2015, and that's all the information I really have about him. Number 2, Ultimate. In the Ultimate universe of Earth 1610, Nightcrawler was rescued by the X-Men from the Weapon X program. While accepted as a member of the X-Men for a time, he's kind of insane, and he has a fixation on Dazzler. Like, I'm talking this guy stole Dazzler and kept her in a cave where the other members of the team could not find her while she was being healed. Nightcrawler eventually left the X-Mansion looking for a place where he could fit in, and thinking he may have found it with the Morlocks. Now, funnily enough though, Kurt and the mutant Toad were captured by the Morlocks and the X-Men came to rescue them, but Nightcrawler refused to leave and became the leader of the Morlocks instead. But that didn't even last, as Nightcrawler eventually rejoined the X-Men. After taking the power-enhancing Banshee substance, Kurt got some upgrades. Now, wielding energy javelins, his appearance also drastically changed, with his hands becoming almost clawed and his tail being pointed at the end. He also makes gold yellow smoke instead of the classic purple smoke when he's teleporting. I don't know why, that's just what they did. Unfortunately, Kurt Wagner and Dazzler, who for some reason became his girlfriend, both passed away during Magneto's ultimatum wave. Ah, sad. Number 1, Days of Future Past. With the power of teleportation, Nightcrawler is one slippery guy. Very hard to bring down, let's say. In the Days of Future Past, it's no different. At first, Nightcrawler was seemingly taken out at the Westchester Mansion by the US Army, along with his wife Amanda Sefton, while accompanying Ilyana Rasputina to a bus stop. Turns out, nope. He somehow survived the Mansion Massacre. Now, fleeing to Europe and establishing himself in United Germany, Kurt was both part of the priesthood and the European Mutant Collective, and he now went by the name Father Wagner. In this position, he was a constant irritation to the hierarchy, and for that was tracked and attacked by the Hound, Rachel Summers. Nightcrawler, or Father Wagner I should say, managed to buy Pietro enough time to get the orphan mutants he was protecting to safety before being apparently taken out by Ahab. But, what do you know, Kurt survived one more time and made his way back to the X-Men, where he became romantically involved with Bess. Together they were part of the mission that retrieved Rachel Summers and freed her from Ahab's control. So, not bad. Not bad at all. Kicking off the list at number 10 is the Legion of Night. The Legion of Night comes from a world where Mr. Sinister corrupted the genomes of those who underwent the mutant resurrection protocols on Krakoa. Because of this, Sinister's control over humanity and mutantdom became supreme. One of his experiments was combining the genetics of different mutants to create powerful chimeras to serve him, and it made for some crazy awesome comic book moments. A particularly special project was turning the genes of Nightcrawler into a band of teleporting assassins. However, due to a spell cast by Margali Zardos, Nightcrawler's genome was actually unstable, ruining any attempts of cloning him. Years later though, after Mother Righteous took out Zardos to break the spell, Mr. Sinister could finally work with Nightcrawler's genome and formed the Legion of Night. This group was comprised of beings that were spliced together versions of Nightcrawler and many other different heroes, including Colossus, Pixie, Emplate, Pyro, Sabretooth, Cyclops, and even Spider-Man. This group were incredibly capable, being able to collect magical artifacts from across the Marvel Universe, even being able to defeat All-Father Thor and take his hammer. Number 9. Wagnerine. But the Legion of Night, while having leadership in Mother Righteous, also had field leaders. One of which was the mutant Banshee possessed by the spirit of variance called Vox Ignis, and the other was Mr. Sinister's favorite Nightcrawler chimera, Wagnerine. Mixing the DNA of both Nightcrawler and Wolverine, Wagnerine, funnily enough, was more of a mix of Laura Kinney, X-23, and Nightcrawler, and she made for an excellent assassin and leader for Mother Righteous once she had been freed from the control of Mr. Sinister. Wagnerine ended up beating the odds and procreated with the Cyclops Nightcrawler, aka Summer Night, to create a golden mutant teleporter who seemingly teleported to a random location immediately after her birth, causing Summer Night to go a little crazy and lose control of himself, falling victim to the influence of Sinister once again. Eventually, it was revealed that Mother Righteous had actually taken the child, and when that was revealed to Wagnerine, she defected. Now 900 years later, she was finally able to bring down Mother Righteous and go on to try and live a happy life with her baby.
Number 8. Ben Parker. If you can believe it, in an alternate reality, there is actually a version of Benjamin Parker, Spider-Man's uncle, who became Thor. This version of Thor and Ben hails from the alternate reality of Earth 615 and makes his first and only appearance in Secret Wars 2, issue number 1. Secret Wars 2 is in TOO, by the way. Here we're introduced to Thor as a member of the Avengers, who are one of the superhero teams from a region of Battleworld known as Number 615. Here, everyone is actually Ben Parker, so I think you can imagine the Avengers, I mean, they're all Ben. Number 7. Eric Masterson. Okay, so with Thor, there are a lot of other folks who have also had the mantle, but this isn't really the same as someone like, you know, DC's Green Lantern. For that, there are many different Green Lanterns, and then there are alternates of those characters from other realities. For Thor, you know, there's usually only one Thor at a time, which is why I'm letting myself count versions of the character like Eric Masterson who are from the main continuity. Eric for a time was Thor himself, but also existed as Thor in the Earth 616 reality. How was this possible? Well, Eric was just a mortal man, but after becoming involved in Thor's adventures, ended up bonded with the hero after he received a life-threatening injury. In order to save Eric's life, Thor pleaded with Odin to help. Odin helped by merging Thor and Eric together, with them each initially retaining their own separate personalities and forms, but simply sharing a body. Number 6. Venom 2099. Venom in the 2099 AD reality of Earth 928 is the brother of the Spider-Man of that era, Spider-Man 2099. Miguel O'Hara, Miguel's half-brother, is named Kron Stone, and he is Miguel's brother through his birth father, Tyler Stone, the head of Alchemax's research and development division. However, Kron never knew that Miguel was his brother, although he pretty much always hated Miguel, so I'm pretty sure even learning this wouldn't really change much between the two. After being left to die by the Punisher of 2099, whose family Kron was responsible for taking out, Kron ended up bumping into the Venom symbiote, which had mutated over the years. The symbiote bonded to Kron, and together they became the villain known as Venom. Number 5. Legion. Legion is another version of Venom that ended up being assimilated by him. Yeah, symbiote alternates can be kind of weird sometimes, to be honest. I mean, right now in the comics we technically have a bunch of Venoms that are all Eddie, but they're all like from different points in his life, and it just Symbiotes are weird. Legion was basically created by the maker and Eddie Brock, and was used to fight against Dark Carnage during the Absolute Carnage Venom-centric event. Dang, that was a fun event. Legion came to be thanks to a combination of codices, which the maker was collecting on Earth 616 under the pretense of helping Venom to defeat Carnage. Now, in reality, the maker had his own plans for the collection of symbiote codices, which I don't think any of us are surprised by. However, those plans would not come to fruition as Eddie managed to bond with the maker's collection of codices in his fight against Dark Carnage, allowing him to defeat Carnage by summoning a Necrosword to, well, defeat him. Following this, when he was once more bonded to the Venom symbiote, it absorbed the Legion symbiote into itself. So, no more Legion symbiote, but it did exist for a time. Number 4. MC2. In the MC2 reality, we get to explore a world where Peter Parker was allowed to actually grow up and settle down. He and Mary Jane end up having 2 children, May and Benji. If you are wondering what Venom is up to in this alternate future, the symbiote ends up separated from Eddie Brock and locked up for a long time. Now, when it finally breaks free, it seeks out Peter, looking to remain bonded to him. Venom intends on isolating Peter, leaving him with no one but the symbiote, and kinda also hopes to torment Peter as payback for his rejection years prior. Venom, as such, intends to kill Peter's family while bonded with Peter so that he can make him watch. Fortunately, Peter's kids both end up with superpowers in this reality, and his daughter, Spider-Girl, aka Mayday, ends up stopping Venom, saving the day as well as her entire family. Number 3. What if the alien costume had possessed Spider-Man? In What If issue number 4, we find out the answer to this question. Here, Peter didn't realize until it was too late what his black suit truly was. No longer able to seemingly separate from Venom, Peter remains stuck with the symbiote. Although he attempts to get help, Venom uses its camouflage powers to make them impossible to find, also taking control of Peter whenever he attempts to actually reach out and contact Black Cat to get help. When Venom does end up in a battle with the other heroes, the symbiote actually chooses to jump ship to Hulk, leaving Peter drained of life energy. Appearing as a frail old man, Peter would soon pass away, dying of old age once he was abandoned. In another confrontation, Venom once again leaves Hulk for Thor, attempting to bond to him permanently. Fortunately, this process is interrupted by the arrival of Black Bolt, who, of course, successfully uses his sonic powers to separate Venom from Thor and also kinda incidentally destroy Mount Rushmore. Sorry about that one. At this moment though, Black Cat appears on the scene and uses a weapon to permanently defeat Venom, getting revenge for the man she loved who the symbiote had taken away from her. Number 2. Venom. One of the alternate versions of Venom is actually also a version of Gwen Stacy. This version of the character hails from the Earth 65 reality, Spider-Gwen's home reality. You might have heard of it, especially if you've seen Across the Spider-Verse. Here for a time, Gwen Stacy, often known as Spider-Woman, Spider-Gwen, or currently Ghost Spider, bonded with the Venom symbiote. In this reality, the Venom symbiote was created in a lab by Dr. Elsa Brock. It was used to return Gwen's spider-like powers to her through bonding with her. This version of the symbiote is seemingly made up of jelly-like little spiders which can come together and even shapeshift. However, this version of Venom was created based off of basically alien spiders. Initially, Gwen attempted to resist the offer to bond with the Venom symbiote because it was offered to her by her enemy, Matt Murdock, but desperate for a cure for her friend Harry Osborn, who, like Peter, had also used the lizard formula on himself, she ended up ultimately becoming one with the symbiote. Number 1. World of Codex. In the reality of Earth 1051, we get to see what would have happened had Dylan turned dark and become the extremely powerful villain known as Codex. In this reality, it was Anne Weying, not Eddie Brock, who became Venom after Peter rejected the symbiote. After a time, Venom adopted an armor-like appearance and changed their name to Agent Venom. Anne and the symbiote ended up having a child together that was half human, half symbiote. They named him Dylan. However, in this reality, Dylan does not become a hero, but instead becomes a villain, after falling under the influence of the symbiote god Null. Taking up the name Codex, Dylan sought to conquer the world. Anne, as Agent Venom, was one of the heroes who fought against Codex in an effort to stop him, but ultimately failed. Following Codex's victory, Agent Venom carries on, continuing the fight underground as a member of the Resistance.
Starting off at number 10 today is Infernal Hulk. On Earth 11638, Bruce Banner was officially completely done with dealing with the unpredictability and rage of the Hulk. So, when Spider-Man introduced Bruce to Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, Banner became his apprentice, and after lots of training in the mystic arts, learned how to separate himself himself from the Hulk entity. He did this by sending it to hell and making it a demon, and this was a great solution. Until the 616 Hulk, along with Deadpool and Spider-Man from 616, came to Earth 11638. The Infernal Hulk managed to enter back into the realm of Earth, swapping places with 616 Banner's Hulk persona. Infernal Hulk went after the new Sorcerer Supreme, Bruce Banner, who was saved by both Deadpool and Spider-Man. So, how did they defeat this demon Hulk? Well, Sorcerer Bruce reversed the banishing spell that sent Hulk to hell, and just before Infernal Hulk could return to his original Bruce Banner body, Bruce had his neck crickle-cracked, which brought him to the pearly gates. But his spirit lived on in the astral plane, so it's all good still. Number 9, Hulk 2099. This version of the Hulk, appearing in the awesome possible future of 2099, where Spider-Man 2099 makes his home, is a guy named John Eisenhart. He was a corporate lawyer for big movie studios who went to manipulate a group called the Knights of Banner, who were a cult-like group of warriors who followed the ideologies of Bruce Banner, which sounds very cool, and it is. John was going to gain the rights for their name in order to make a movie about them, all while giving them nothing in return. He turns them into this corporation called Sweet Dreams, thinking they'll be brought in peacefully, but it doesn't go that way at all. The only Knight of Banner who survives, Kid, goes to a gamma machine, but John saves the kid, pushing him out of the way and being blasted with gamma radiation. John can now turn into the Hulk whenever he wants. He has a super strong prehensile tongue, which is terrifying, and he is much more beast-like with massive claws. He is just as powerful as regular Hulk, but unfortunately, his comics were not popular enough to last more than 12 issues. Maybe he'll get a resurgence. I doubt it though.
Number 8, 1602. King James is the alternate version of Wolverine that exists in the 1602 reality, or rather, the 1602 reality as it exists in God Emperor Doom's Battle World, which appeared during the 2015 Secret Wars event. This version of Wolverine also has claws like his comic book counterpart, but is a villain instead of a hero. He is one of the witch breed that Sarah and Angela hunt down, with Charles Xavier taking over for James after he is defeated.
In its 7, Ultimate Wolverine. In this reality, Wolverine suffers from amnesia, and as a result, there's little known about his early life, but what is known is both suspect and unverifiable. It is believed that at one point, Wolverine had a wife and child, but they were supposedly killed by Sabretooth. As both Wolverine and Sabretooth's memories have been tampered with in this past timeline, this claim is suspect. However, if both of their memories were altered, maybe it does have some validity. Wolverine did own a wedding ring that serves as his only link to his past, not the game. That's a whole other thing, that's a different channel. But this version of Wolverine has the healing factor, disease resistance, toxin resistance that damn I wish I had 2 years ago. Extended longevity, superhuman senses, the stamina, the ladies love him because of that too. He has that agility, the reflexes, the classic adamantium laced skeleton and retractable claws. He's experienced in hand-to-hand combat, he's an expert assassin, he can lift 800 pounds. Like bro, come on, can you even lift? Spider-Man lifts twice that when he's taking it easy, okay? And that's not even in the symbiote suit, which I guess technically doesn't count and doesn't exactly exist, but you know what, let's ignore that. He's still cool.
Number 6, The Punisher. In the What If Wolverine one-shot issue number 1 from 2005, here we get to imagine what the world might have been like had Wolverine become Punisher instead of Frank Castle. The story is set a bit in the past and imagines what it would be like if Logan had lost his family and sought revenge. In this version of the tale, Wolverine goes up against Scarface, who has Logan's family killed. His wife in this universe is Silver Fox, and together the two had a son. Scarface also might be a character that you'll actually recognize from the main Marvel universe here. He's an alternate version of Logan's half-brother Dog, who you may know from the Wolverine origin story and comic series.
Halfway through into number 5, Wild Thing. On Earth 982, Rena was the new girl at a high school where some of the more popular girls tried to make her life miserable because, you know, it's high school. Stating that she was the daughter of an immigrant and an unemployed biker, but her father is Logan. You know, Wolverine. So he picked her up from school on his bike, and opinions changed about her. Because, you know, Yeah, especially when they learned that her mother Elektra was a wealthy martial arts expert. Gotta love high school. However, life at high school wasn't just about dealing with the crowd, because as Wild Thing, Rena had to save a classmate from a high-speed kidnapper, defeat a computerized assassin, stop a demonic invader, and even fight one of her teachers when he was turned into a Prime Sentinel. Yeah, jeez. That's just high school. Another Sky High reference for those that are keeping track. Rena first appeared in J2 number 5 in 1998 and was created by Ron Lim and Tom DeFalco, even if technically she was created by Logan and Elektra, if you get the joke.
Number 4, Albert. I love Albert. He is the android alternate of Wolverine who was designed by Donald Pierce. Remember him? I remember him. Pierce created Albert along with LCD as part of a plan to trap Wolverine and have him destroyed. Fortunately for Wolverine, LCD was given the wrong level of sort of a logic machine in her mind and managed to find a way around her and Albert being used as such, ultimately freeing Albert and LCD in the end of their obligation to kill Logan. Albert was given his name by LCD after Albert Einstein, who she compared his intelligence to after she severely upgraded him all by herself.
Getting close to the end in number 3, Wolverine Pool. Wade Wilson from Earth TRN 1946 was bonded with adamantium through his skeleton by the Weapons Plus program. He was later recruited by Deadpool or Dreadpool for his army, and he killed Deadpool Pulp before the arrival of Galactipool. I wish that this was a joke. He was attacked by Deadpool with a grenade from which bugs and other it ate all of his flesh, leaving behind only his skeleton and his claws, which was seemingly the same as Earth 616's Wolverine's skeleton and claws, but it's a Deadpool. It's Deadpool in Wolverine's body. That also has the same scarring that regular Deadpool has. Wolverine Pool's healing factor is most likely weaker than 616 Wolverine or Deadpool's healing factor, which makes him less dangerous, but come on, okay? A combination of Wolverine and Deadpool is something that we should all fear, and most likely do, but I'm surprised Deadpool didn't make this a thing at the end of Deadpool 2 when he was correcting everything that he had done wrong. He should have done this, that would have been funny.
Number 2, Talon. Laura Kinney is obviously one of my favorite versions of the Wolverine character, and she herself has also technically been Wolverine. Initially known as X-23, Laura was actually created to be a clone of Logan. Her mother, Sarah Kinney, initially tried to create a clone of Logan, but was unsuccessful due to the Y chromosome being damaged. Instead, she attempted to compensate for this by using some of her own genetic material to supplement the parts of the genetic sequence that were basically damaged and missing, creating a female clone instead. It worked, but her work was damaged by her rival, Dr. Xander Rice, forcing Sarah to become a surrogate for the clone if she wanted to save her work. Sarah did just that, and X-23 was born. For years, X-23 was raised to be only a weapon, but eventually, after the members of the program turned on each other, she was able to secure her freedom. Unfortunately, along with her freedom came loss. Loss of her purpose in the world, and loss of the few people involved in the program who had genuinely cared for her, including her mother, Sarah, who named Laura with her last dying breath. Later, Laura would go on to track down Wolverine and attempt to kill him, seeing herself and her genetic father as nothing more than deadly and dangerous weapons. However, through meeting Logan, X-23 also found a sense of family, and eventually would even come to join the X-Men team. And I mean, spoiler alert, she doesn't end up killing Wolverine, in case you didn't know. Currently, she goes by the codename of Talon.
And finally, in at number 1, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is obviously a combination of Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' death at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. I'm sorry, dude, Alberta sucks. His uncle was a member of the RCMP, or the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for those of you who use the Imperial system, and was ambushed and killed by poachers a short time after Logan's arrival. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air Force. I don't know if they have an acronym, but it just felt right. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, which was a Canadian super soldier program, and then from there, it's kind of the same thing. His bones were bonded to adamantium, and he discovered that he was a meta-mutant, which is just the meta mutants in this dimension, but yeah, it's Batman and Wolverine, okay? He has all the powers of Logan and a clawcopter and clawmobile. That's awesome. I want this in the MCU. If they're fixing the DCEU so that we can do this, that would be great. And at 10, T'Challa. In the year 1988, within the hidden nation of Wakanda, T'Chaka, the ruler, cautions his young son T'Challa against venturing beyond their borders, emphasizing the suffering and devastation that exists in the outside world. However, driven by curiosity, T'Challa defies his father's advice one night and ventures to the outskirts of Wakanda. Unbeknownst to him, though, the powerful force field that conceals the nation attracts the attention of Yondu Onata's subordinates, who mistakenly abduct T'Challa due to the cosmic energy emanating from Wakanda's vibranium meteorite. In space, Yondu then reprimands his crew for snatching the wrong person, but decides to welcome T'Challa nonetheless, recognizing his adventurous spirit. Impressed by T'Challa's exploratory nature, Yondu extends an invitation to join the Ravagers and explore the vast expanse of the galaxy. Fast forward 20 years, where T'Challa, now known as Star-Lord, successfully retrieves the orb from its chamber. However, his actions draw the attention of Korra, the Pursuer, and two Sakarans who are sent by Roman the Accuser to get the artifact. This is just it's from an episode of What If, you know, the MCU animated series on Disney Plus. So if you want the full story along with Thanos and the rest, be sure you watch that episode because it's good, pretty good. And at 9, Guardians 3000. As the ruler of the dwindling Spartax Empire, Star-Lord of Earth 691 found himself leading the remnants of his war fleet. In a critical turn of events, he was summoned by the Guardians of the Galaxy along with the remaining leaders of the Galactic Council to address a grave situation. This involved the human Gina Drake and a temporal anomaly that reset their family, returning them to the beginning of a war they had previously won. Amidst an unexpected ambush orchestrated by the Brotherhood of the Badoon, Star-Lord courageously fought alongside his fellow Guardians, determined to create an opening for their escape. United by their mission, they braved the chaos and danger together, striving to overcome the odds and protecting their cause. He has a pistol capable of conjuring one of the 4 elements, and Peter Quill of This Earth has also mentioned that he inherited his armor, element, gun, and ship when he became Star-Lord. So it could mean that this isn't really an alternate version of Star-Lord, but rather his descendant. Gina Drake also suggests it as they meet Earth 616 Star-Lord, and it's revealed in Guardians 3000 number 6 that Peter was born on Spartax in 2985.
Number 8, Punisher Noir. The 2009 Noir series from Marvel Comics saw several heroes existing in the Prohibition era post-World War I. Kicking off with the hit of Spider-Man Noir, other characters like Iron Man, Daredevil, the X-Men, and of course, the Punisher soon followed. In this timeline, Frank Castiglione Sr. was a hero of World War I, who had a huge skull tattoo on his chest as a means of intimidating his German opponents in the trenches. And he was also like an American James Bond style hero going on missions against the Russians and Germans. Unfortunately though, when he returns from the war, he finds himself dispatched from life because of his previous government missions. I bet you thought he would be the Punisher here, huh? Well, you're wrong, because after finding his father's arsenal, Frank Jr. wears a skull emblazoned balaclava and hunts down his father's executioners, who turn out to be noir versions of Jigsaw, Bullseye, and Barracuda, before a final run-in with a fan favorite, the Russian. While some of the noir characters missed the mark in my eyes, Punisher Noir is actually pretty great. Number 7, 5 Ronin. While we're on the topic of historical versions of Frank Castle, I have to mention one of my favorite little stories. 5 Ronin from 2011 moves the Marvel Universe back in time to ancient feudal Japan, with 5 issues each focusing on samurai versions of the Punisher, the Hulk, Deadpool, Psylocke, and Wolverine. It is so cool. Each character gets a short standalone story where all of them eventually encounter the wandering Deadpool, who narratively links them all together for us. This version of the Punisher shows him returning to Japan from war in Korea to find a rival has taken the opportunity to take away his family and claim his land. As is usually the case with Frank Castle, or in this world, Akagi, this leads to some ruthless revenge. Wielding a katana and a big old blunderbuss that I forget the name of, Samurai Frank brings a decided end to anyone that attempts to cross his path during his quest for vengeance. Number 6, Franken Castle. After he was taken off the board by Daken on orders from Norman Osborn during the Dark Reign event, Frank Castle, yes, the Punisher, was revived by the Legion of Monsters as an undead zombie-like monster known as Franken Castle. The Legion resurrected Frank to recruit him in their fight against the villain known as Hellsguard, who was systematically taking out monsters using samurai-like assassins. Although he originally refused to help them, Frank got involved after seeing some innocent innocent little monsters being dispatched too, and that is not something Frank is willing to abide. He went on to slay hordes of Hellsguard's men. It's honestly an incredibly interesting moment in Frank Castle's history, and it got this version of Frank moved to Earth 666. He also nearly enacted revenge against Daken, being stopped by Wolverine before he was returned to his human form through the Bloodstone. But he kept going on in 666, and it's really cool. Number 5. Marvel Universe versus the Punisher. In this universe, the Punisher interrupts an arms deal involving what he thinks is a briefcase nuke, only to discover that it is in fact a man-made virus that, for Frank Castle, makes him immune to infection, illness, and disease. That's pretty good, but it didn't quite do this for everyone else though. Problem here is that the chemical weapon found its way into the water supply and then into the food and started in New York, spreading to the whole world through infected travelers. And then it started turning people and heroes into starting with Spider-Man. An outbreak spread and led to insane events, including a war against the cannibals, who then became the dominant beings of this Earth. But the real star of the show is Frank Castle, the Punisher. This is one of the greatest and most brutal Punisher stories ever. It plays on many of his character's flaws and strengths, but the story also shows him defeating so many different heroes who you and I have always wanted to see him face, and who we doubt he would actually be able to defeat, but he does it anyways. It's also a surprisingly deep story that has a ton of awesome moments. Definitely check it out. Number 4. Cosmic Ghost Rider. In the Thanos Wins story arc from writers Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw from Thanos Volume 2, one hero who ended up surviving the attack on the Earth by an alternate timeline Thanos was actually Frank Castle. But he did it in a bit of a different way. Frank was hit with debris and actually passed on pretty easily during the final stand against Thanos on Earth. Definitely a lame way to go. So once Frank made it to Hell, he made a deal with Mephisto to return to Earth for vengeance, and he was given the power to do just that as the Ghost Rider, the spirit of vengeance. Unfortunately, when this new Ghost Rider showed back up on Earth, everything was already lost. Being completely alone in the ruins of Earth, Frank went completely insane. Eventually, as he does, Galactus showed up, and being the only Earthling left alive, and a very powerful one at that, Frank made a deal. Galactus was allowed to have the Earth if Galactus made Frank his new herald, granting Frank the power cosmic as well as the spirit of vengeance. These two spent hundreds of years together until Thanos completely flattened Galactus. Then, Frank became King Thanos' #1 dude, going on time-hopping adventures and being completely awesome. Number 3. Space Punisher. In 2012, Marvel showed us a very different version of Frank Castle when they released a 4-issue run called Space Punisher. The series is nuts, super colorful, and heavily inspired by the pulpy sci-fi of the 1950s. There's an awesome robotic sidekick, insane versions of Marvel superheroes and supervillains, including an absolutely monstrous and terrifying version of the Hulk. But it's all centered around a ponytailed, laser sword, blaster-wielding version of the Punisher who finds himself facing space werewolves, space fascists, and space supervillains. It is worth noting, however, that this little weird Punisher story was divisive as hell. Very different from anything before it, Space Punisher was unique to say the least, but it's a comic book. If you can get past the weirdness, it's kind of enjoyable. Number 2. Netflix. We have had 3 movies of debatable quality that have brought Frank Castle to the screen, and while Ray Stevenson and Thomas Jane, and I guess Dolph Lundgren did decent jobs as Frank Castle, when Jon Bernthal showed up as the Punisher in the 2nd season of Netflix's acclaimed Daredevil show, he did it better than anyone before him. Or, at least for me, it was the most believable version of the Punisher I had ever seen on a screen. Bernthal brought fury and intensity at all times, almost to the point of seeming positively insane, especially when compared with the morals of Matt Murdock. His character was also incredibly capable and brutal, as is necessary for the Punisher to work. When he got his own show in 2017, it brought everything to a whole different level, telling a conspiracy story that also took a really good look at PTSD in soldiers, while also bringing the right amount of brutality that you'd expect from a Punisher story. Even my mom liked this show, and she doesn't even read comics. That's the highest praise I know how to give. And coming in at number 1, Punisher Max. Punisher Max was an adult comic, and for a guy whose main thing is ushering people to the pearly gates, it makes sense that this setting suits his character best. Removing the Punisher from all the costumes and superpowers of the regular Marvel universe and dropping him right into an America facing the early days of the War on Terror, it kicked off with the CIA trying to recruit Frank, which sets off a hugely violent political game. This Frank Castle was a veteran of the Cold War, running Black Ops alongside Nick Fury in Vietnam, and he is not someone you want to mess around with. Like, he lights out Microchip during the first storyline timeline just for helping the CIA to even find Frank Castle. His enemies here are also much more threatening and scarily realistic compared to anything that Earth-616 has thrown at the Punisher. With a big shout out to Barracuda specifically, another former soldier just as ruthless and skilled as Frank is. Punisher Max shows the very real physical and emotional damage that Frank Castle's crusade would cause him in real life. Obviously with a tiny suspension of disbelief that comes with a comic book. If you choose to give it a read, just be warned that it is extremely graphic and you shouldn't read it unless you're over the age of like, I'd say 18. Starting off the list today at number 10 is Red Death. The Dark Multiverse was given to us largely by telling the story of multiple different versions of Batman who have each been twisted into a corrupted, villainous version of Bruce Wayne. Brought together by the Batman Who Laughs, the Dark Knights are basically like an evil collection of Batman from across the Dark Multiverse, each one standing in or representing a member of the Justice League. Arguably one of the most popular of these Batmen would be Red Death, an evil Bruce Wayne with the powers of the Flash. In his dark reality, Bruce Wayne was pushed to the limit after losing so many of his sidekicks, which should be a good reason for why he should stop recruiting younglings to be his Robins, but I digress. Believing that he needed to be more brutal in his crime fighting and that he would be better at using the Speed Force than Barry Allen, Bruce took down Flash's rogues, took their equipment, and then used it against his fellow Justice Leaguer. Batman then strapped Barry to his Batmobile, fused it together with the Cosmic Treadmill, and then he drove it all into the Speed Force, absorbing Barry and his powers. Bruce, now empowered with the Speed Force and much more evil than he should be, became the Red Death and joined with the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights. Number 9. Last Son. While the majority of characters given to us from DC's Dark Multiverse are alternates of Batman, thanks to the Batman Who Laughs and his Dark Knights, the Dark Multiverse is a place where everything can go wrong with anyone. Probably the most alarming of the Dark Multiverse alternates would be the dark versions of Superman, and the Last Son, in my mind, stands above the rest. This version of Kal-El came from a dark universe corrupted by the Darkest Night, and instead of crash landing straight on Earth from the destruction of Krypton, Superman's rocket got lost and exposed to the cosmic storm of a black hole. When he finally reached his destination, Earth, the last son of Krypton was burning with the energy of 1,000,000 suns. It sounds super cool, and Last Son looks absolutely amazing, but his whole concept is based on Superman's fear of becoming overcharged by the sun, and his capabilities are through the roof. He's terrifying.
And it ain't Lord Starkill. Peter Quill, known as Lord Starkill in his home universe of Earth 25271, was a notorious space pirate and leader of the Ravagers. He had a personal vendetta against Corporal Carol Danvers, the leader of the rival Zeta flight pirates. Thanos the Just was a wise and noble peacekeeper who had hired Quill to retrieve a displaced reality stone from another universe. Quill laid in wait on the planet of Gaia, anticipating the emergence of Dr. Eve and her MIM unit from an ancient temple with the reality stone, and with his trusty element rifle he skillfully incapacitated both targets from a safe distance and then claimed the stone for himself. During his journey back to the hideout, Quill contacted Thanos, much to the latter's dismay, as he preferred not to be associated with the individuals of Quill's reputation, but upon his return the hideout was suddenly attacked by the Zetas with assistance from Widower. The Ravagers valiantly fought back, managing to restrain the entire enemy team, but in a controversial move, Lord Starkill proposed selling his nemesis and her crew to Thanos to clear his own name. That's definitely a cutthroat move, and you know what, Quill? I respect it. Those are the kind of go-get-em attitudes we need in space. And it's 7, Gamora. Following the presumed demise of Peter Quill, Gamora donned his mask and assumed the mantle of Star-Lord on Earth TRN-421, taking charge as leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The team consisted of Drax, Groot, Rocket, Iron Man, and Charlie-27. Their mission was to confront the formidable Silver Galactus, who had absorbed the power of the Silver Surfer and become even more ravenous than ever before, and at the Forsaken Gates of Asgard, where the gods were absent, the Guardians faced off against their former teammate Vance Astro, who had become the latest Herald of Galactus. Vance deployed an army of Punisher robots to keep the Guardians occupied while his master targeted their base at nowhere. Meanwhile, Quill, who was assumed dead, had cleverly faked his demise and taken on the persona of Major Victory, infiltrating the ranks of the Heralds of Galactus to earn the trust of Silver Galactus. So, damn.
Number 6. Abin Sur. On Earth 20, Abin Sur is actually the protector of Earth as Green Lantern. However, tragically, because he resembles a devil here, he actually protects Earth from a distance because he doesn't want to scare the planet's inhabitants. I think that's both sweet and also kinda sad. As such, he protects Earth from the Shadows, a hero who is largely unknown to the planet's populace. Not only is he a member of the Green Lantern Corps in this reality, but he is also a member of the Society of Superheroes, who were brought together by this universe's Dr. Fate, who goes simply by Doc Fate. Abin Sur as Green Lantern is also one of the heroes who joins up with the multiversal superhero team known as Justice Incarnate. Number 5. Star Sapphire. Despite still being known as Star Sapphire on Earth 11, Carol Jordan, an alternate of both Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris, is actually the equivalent to Hal Jordan's Green Lantern of the Prime Earth. Earth 11 is a world in which the premier superhero team of Earth, known as the Justice Guild, is basically gender bent, being made up of mostly female superheroes who are versions of their Prime Earth male counterparts. Wonder Woman, of course, in this reality though, is a man, because that would of course be the gender bend for Wonder Woman, Wonder Man. Despite being the alternate version of this Earth's Green Lantern, however, Carol still remains here a Star Sapphire, but is cemented solely as a hero. So not necessarily Star Sapphire in the sense that sometimes she's kinda evil. Number 4. Tangent Comics. I love the whole look of this character, to be honest. She seems super cool and super mysterious. This version of Green Lantern hails from Tangent Comics, as per the name of this point, obviously. She made her first appearance in Tangent Comics Green Lantern issue number 1 in the 90s. Now, if you aren't familiar, Tangent Comics was actually a DC imprint that existed from 1997 to 1998. It had various one-shot comics that introduced new characters who use names familiar to us through DC Comics mainline, but adding a new creative spin on them. As a result, its characters were super different from the versions that we are used to. Green Lantern herself has claimed to have many different names, including Lois Lane and Zatanna, but her true identity still remains a mystery to us. Her power actually seems to come from a more traditional Chinese lantern as well, so she's quite a different character and quite a different take, which I guess is why I like her so much. Number 3. Alan Scott. Now for this one, we're not talking about the Prime Earth Alan Scott. In fact, you may have noticed I'm actively trying to avoid mentioning any Prime Earth lanterns on this list that, just are not Hal Jordan. We are talking instead about Alan Scott of Earth 2. This version of Alan Scott gained his powers after he almost died as the result of a train crash. Here, Alan Scott specifically uses his Green Lantern powers to fight against the Grey, which is also interesting because his former love, Sam Zhao, actually goes on to become an avatar of the White. Yes, in this reality, Alan Scott is still gay. For any who are wondering, in fact his history here differs somewhat, as he is actually openly gay in this reality, which is a little different. In fact, Alan was about to propose to Sam when the train they were on crashed, ultimately leading to Alan getting his powers after being left as the only survivor. That's right, everyone else was gone, is just Alan left. He was approached by the Green Flame, which told him he was chosen to become the protector of Earth as Earth's Green Lantern. Number 2. Emerald Knight. This alternate version of John Stewart hails from Earth number 3, the home of the crime syndicate. This version of John, however, unlike many others from this universe, doesn't seem to be exactly a supervillain. Although he definitely does kill people and has made some questionable choices for sure, but there's definitely people in this reality that are more villainy than him. Initially, this version of John Stewart was a father and policeman who made a deal with a crime lord in order to get his daughter an emergency operation on her leg that she desperately needed. Although he paid the crime lord back right away, as he obviously did not want to be in debt to him, one night the crime lord's son ran into John and basically mocked him for having ever even made a deal with his father. Furious, John beat the son of the crime boss out back in an alleyway. When his daughter begged him to stop, a ring appeared presenting itself to him. Because the son was basically at this point threatening to tell his father and promised that John and his daughter would pay with their lives for their actions here, John chose to accept the ring and became an Emerald Knight, one of the overlords of Oa's soldier. A major difference between the Emerald Knights and the Green Lanterns of Prime Earth is that they can severely punish those who are deemed their enemy, often killing them. Number 1. DCAU John Stewart. While we know of John Stewart from the Prime Earth reality, the main continuity currently of the comics, he also has an alternate that hails from the DC animated universe. The animated universe isn't just pulled from one show, but is actually made up of a collection of shows, films, and comics, all exploring the same versions of these characters. It's not even really just its own universe, to be honest. At this point, it's also kind of like its own multiverse, possessing at least 9 of its own different different alternate Earths. Here, John Stewart has a similar origin to his comic book counterpart, serving in the military before later being selected to be a member of the Green Lantern Corps. Part of the reason he actually believes he was selected is because of his time spent reading superhero comics as a kid, which he thinks actually helped him to aspire to become a hero, developing heroic traits and characteristics, and hence therefore being selected to become a Green Lantern. Number 10. What if Venom had possessed the Punisher? A great question. Well, as you can imagine, basically what would have happened is a lot of death. In issue number 44 of What If, we examine the answer to this question and see that Frank Castle ends up going on a killing spree as a result of joining with the symbiote. However, in the end, Frank realizes that Venom is attempting to fully possess him and resists, warning the symbiote that if not given back full control over his own body and his own actions, he will be forced to destroy the symbiote by taking his own life. This makes Venom reconsider its position, and Punisher is given back control over his body, with the two of them teaming up to become the new Punisher. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us by clicking that like button? Number 9. Age of Apocalypse. While it's never explicitly stated who the host is, the Venom of the Age of Apocalypse is interesting in terms of their appearance. This version of the symbiote takes a host that appears to resemble Captain America. They have a similar or the same shield as Cap and appear to be wearing a Captain America costume. I don't actually think Captain America makes an appearance in the AOA reality explicitly, so it seems more than likely that this is actually meant to be him, because I don't think we see him anywhere else, despite it being unconfirmed. If true, I like how Venom mainly changes the appearance of Cap's face and his hands, and that's really about it.
Number 8. Ultimate Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham is one of the most popular alternate versions of Spider-Man out there, but he is just an alternate version of Peter Parker. Luckily for us, his popularity coupled with the popularity of Miles Morales gave us Miles Morhames. Yes, that is his name, and he is the ultimate Spider-Pig. As is the case in seemingly all universes, Miles' uncle was secretly a masked criminal known in this universe as the Fowler. One of the items Fowler had stolen turned out to be a radioactive spider, which is the one that bit Miles, granting him his spider abilities. Following the passing of the original Spider-Ham when he defeated the Green Gobbler once and for all, Miles stepped up to take his mantle in order to become the ultimate Spider-Ham. The world that Miles hailed from, Earth 14094, ended up actually being destroyed by Dr. Doom after the world was saved from Galactopus, who, he's not an octopus, but get this, Galactus is a platypus. I mean, come on. I feel like I'm way too excited about this. After the destruction of his reality, Miles traveled the multiverse, warning other universes of how to protect themselves against calamity until he arrived on Earth 1610, where he stayed. Number 7. Hulk. I wasn't done with the What If Miles Morales stories yet. I can't just give you guys one of those awesome Miles Moraleses. I can give you all the Miles Moraleses. Yeah, Miles Morales in this issue is very much like his normal self, until the day that Uncle Aaron made a deal with Emil Blonsky. Aaron found himself in possession of a suspicious briefcase. Noticing a spider on said briefcase, Miles attempted to kill it, but instead accidentally knocked over the briefcase, which caused him to step on a nuclear cartridge, exposing himself to gamma radiation, and well, he got Hulkified in the middle of the night. Miles tries to keep his transformations on the down low and under control, enlisting the help of his friend Genki, who didn't believe him until Miles stepped on a Lego, which, as we all should know, causes a rage and turned him into the Hulk. Eventually, Miles spied on his uncle as the Prowler as he was dealing with Emil, which is when his uncle made an attempt at Emil's life. Now during their kerfuffle, another briefcase was dropped and Uncle Aaron also found himself being exposed to gamma radiation, but this time he was turned into the Abomination. Number 6. Into the Spider-Verse. Yes, of course we have to talk about the version of Miles Morales appearing in the awesome animated Spider-Verse movies. Voiced by actor Shameik Moore, this version of Miles Morales brought the character to a very large audience with an origin story that differed slightly from his original counterpart, but it also still retains enough elements of that original story, which I believe is part of the reason his universe designation is Earth 1610B instead of having its own separate reality number. The best part of this Miles Morales though is when the Spider-Verse opens up and he gets to interact with the various other Spider-Men and women across the multiverse. The first movie was an absolute hit. It had a dope soundtrack, an amazing animation style with a superb cast, hilarious writing, and a heap of heartfelt moments. Now I have yet to see the sequel, but I am super excited to see where this Miles Morales goes with his story. Number 5. Mayor. This version of Miles Morales comes at us from the series known as The End, which basically chronicles the final stories of various different heroes in the Marvel landscape. Some of the most famous of these stories have been the Hulk The End and Deadpool The End, but for Miles Morales, his possible alternate future takes place decades from now in a ravaged place that was once New York City. Most places on Earth had been ravaged by monsters known as the Germs, with Brooklyn being one of the few places that had been saved and protected by this massive shield. Side note, I like how germs are the monsters here. Like, it's kind of like all those things you learn about as kids when germs were like little monsters, but now they're actual monsters. Kind of hilarious, kind of cool. I don't know. But after becoming Spider-Man and letting the world know his identity, Miles was chosen as mayor of Brooklyn and as its protector. He faced off against a Captain America wannabe known as Captain Last and his One America army of raiders. After Captain Last eventually merges with a germ in order to attack Brooklyn, Miles sacrifices his life to bring the Captain down and save the lives of everyone in Brooklyn. Good job. Way to go. Number 4. Wolverine. Yep, it's another Miles Morales what if, and I don't know why Wolverine is the last person I expected to see in this series, but I'm extremely okay with it. Miles Morales in this world is instead a mutant with the same abilities as Wolverine. When he is younger, Miles is stolen away alongside other children by Weapon X, who turn him into the adamantium skeleton superweapon just like the regular Wolverine. Now fast forward a few years, and now in this world, Sentinels are being used to hunt down mutants by S.H.I.E.L.D. And after Miles takes out like 3 of them, S.H.I.E.L.D. sends this super cool looking warrior wielding an adamantium katana to take Miles out. This awesome S.H.I.E.L.D. warrior turns out to be Miles' father, and once he discovers this Wolverine mutant is his own son, he instead turns on S.H.I.E.L.D., which is when they send in Miles' uncle Aaron, who seems to be this world's version of Sabretooth. Miles' father defends his son to his dying breath until Miles jumps in to beat Sabretooth to a pulp and almost ends him before his father convinces him not to and to instead be a hero. It all wraps up with the X-Men showing up to recruit Miles, but led by Professor X, who is Genki Lee. It's just wild. It's so cool. Number 3. Vision Miles. No, this is not a highly advanced android version of Miles Morales. It is, in fact, the Miles Morales who exists in a possible future shown to us in a vision from the inhuman precog known as Ulysses Kane. The reason I want to talk about this seemingly insignificant version of Miles Morales who only appeared in a vision is because this Miles was able to take the life of Captain America. Now obviously Captain America is not an indestructible guy. He's not the most powerful hero and he could probably be taken out by any number of heroes, but the respect that Captain America carries and the influence he has makes him one of those characters that you simply do not see being taken out very often. So, to see it happen here in Civil War II at the hands of Miles Morales on the steps of the ruined United States Capitol building in the reality of Earth 61115 is one hell of a shocking image. I want to know what happens after Miles does this, but we won't know until a writer decides to take the initiative to put out a story set in this alternate crazy reality. Number 2. The Falcon. Temporary reality number 852 gave us a Miles whose history is similar to his Earth 1610 counterparts, only he never gained powers from a genetically engineered spider. Instead, this Miles' favorite heroes were the totally underrated Nighthawk and his sidekick and partner, the Falcon. Unfortunately, like how Spider-Man lost his life to the Goblin in the Ultimate reality, in this one, it's the Falcon that ultimately croaked at the hands of the Goblin. This devastated Miles, and he took it as his opportunity to take the reins. Creating a costume similar to the Falcon's using his electrical engineering skills, Miles aided Nighthawk as he was battling the villains Scorpion and Scorpia. But Nighthawk was not too receptive to this pretender coming in and trying to replace his old partner. Wanting to prove to Nighthawk that he could be a hero, Miles created the Young Squadron with Kid Spectrum and Girl Power. While Miles and the Young Squadron were fighting the Wrecking Crew, Miles was stolen away by the Goblin's partner Deadpool, who was attempting to make sure the Falcon Mantle never came back. Deadpool was eventually defeated by the other members of the Young Squadron, and after handing Deadpool over to Nighthawk, Miles and the Young Squadron decided to be a better team than the other heroes of their reality. And finally, in at number 1, Captain America. Yes, we are rounding off today's list with the very first of the What If Miles Morales stories, which in my opinion is one of the best. In the very first issue, Miles' dad is part of the new super soldier program inspired by the original that created Captain America. Uncle Aaron, who always plays a large part in Miles' life, steals the super soldier serum and keeps it in his fridge, which is where Miles finds it looking for a drink. It turns out Miles is actually a perfect match for the serum, and he becomes the new Captain America. It's super cool because not only is Miles the new Cap, but Tiana Toombs becomes the Falcon and Sam Wilson becomes the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. with the eye patch and everything. Uncle Aaron becomes Prowler after being attacked by Black Widow, and Lonnie Lincoln is the Grey Skull, which is this reality's Red Skull. Miles here seems to be just as powerful as the normal Captain America, if not a little younger and by extension, a little bit more naive.
Number 10, Howlett. Howlett is another one of my favorite Wolverine alternates. He hails from Earth 12025, known for being his own home universe. That's how popular he is. That's how we know what that universe is, just based on this one character. He was created by Greg Pak and Mike McCone, and made his first appearance in 2004's Astonishing X-Men in issue number 44. In this reality, James Howlett becomes the Governor General of Canada, serving both the Queen of England and Canada. He often teams up with the Hercules of this reality, and the two even have a romantic relationship together. Tragically, their romance initially had to be kept a secret because both of the people they served, the Queen and Zeus in Hercules' case, banned them from being in a relationship together, each for their own different reasons. And even when they did reveal their love, there was hell to pay.
In at 9, Old Man Logan. 50 years later, Logan lives with his wife Maureen, his son Scotty, and his daughter Jade on a plot of land in Sacramento of what used to be California, but is now a part of Hulkland, and no, that's not an amusement park. He requires money to pay his rent to his landlords for his territory, his landlords being the descendants of Bruce Banner, you know, the Hulk gang, who are the product of just a messed up procreation situation. I don't think I can say the actual words on YouTube, but you get what I'm saying. He refuses to sell his children's toys to pay for rent, so Logan is shown as just, you know, a broken man who refuses to fight, even though, you know, he definitely could. He's living peacefully, but then when he realizes he's unable to pay, that's when the Hulk gang will not accept a plea deal to pay double next month. So yeah, considering how they're inappropriately and without permissionly conceived children of Hulk and She-Hulk, which is Bruce's cousin, you know that this isn't going to go well. They confront him on his lack of payment, violently beat him, and then just, oh god, it's such a messed up story. Logan entertains visions of gutting the eldest Hulk brother Otis as he takes the beating, but yeah, the Hulk gang later kills his family, so Logan kills all the Hulk gang. It's a messed up version, but pretty iconic, but still, yikes. What the hell, Marvel? God, don't put this in the MCU. Thank God this wasn't a what if episode. Jeez. In at 8, Capitalist Couriers. First appearing in Flash Volume 2 number 6 in 1987, the group originally known as the Red Trinity was created by Russian scientist Pyotr Orlov when he and his partner attempted to recreate Flash's super speed abilities after watching a daring rescue. The second group of test subjects were successful and were renamed the Red Trinity. The group included Anatoly, Bebek, and Kasofia, and they became agents for the Soviet Soviet military. But here's where things get weird. When the third Flash came to enlist the help of Dr. Orloff in the issue of saving Jerry McGee's life, the Red Trinity chose to follow Orloff to America. While there, they became infatuated with American culture and decided to stay there, opening a business as a team of super speed messengers called Capitalist Courier Services Inc. Cassiopeia has since died. He was running up the side of a building to make a delivery when his speed vanished for some reason and he fell to his death. That was thanks to Savitar's reappearance, but these Russian speedsters literally made Amazon Super Prime. Okay, that's great. That's so good. That's hilarious. That's what I would do with my powers if I got super speed. And at 7, Leah Nelson. Leah Nelson from Earth 9 is a very different version of the Flash, to say the least, but on her Earth, Leah is the second most recognized person on the planet. She was an instant celebrity since her parents were the first people to visit Jupiter, and her mother was a bit of a hero and her father was a Nightwing agent, even if he wasn't very good at his job. Leah is a being of light, and once able to control her power, she took on the moniker of the Flash. Since she is a being of light, she's able to travel at the speed of light, making her a speedster without a connection to the Speed Force, which I admit may frustrate some of you with her being on this list, but I don't know, I thought it was interesting, okay, and certainly an interesting version of the Flash. Leah also had a whole host of powers including superhuman speed, metamorphosis, where she uses light to create solid holograms to alter her appearance, energy construct creation, allowing her to make solid objects out of light like a Green Lantern, energy projection, which is just beams of energy, and energy absorption. And it's 6, Savitar. The Savitar from the comics is certainly another interesting character, first appearing in Flash Volume 2 number 108 in 1995. The man whose name is still unknown who became Savitar was a Cold War test pilot. As he reached top speed in a test flight for a supersonic fighter plane, the plane was struck by lightning and went down in hostile territory. Once he learned about his speed though, he became obsessed with it and craved more, like any good villain does. He named himself after the Hindu god of motion and spent years studying, learning new powers that no other speedsters had mastered. He can protect himself in what is in essence a Speed Force shield field, can give speed to objects and other people, and heal injuries instantaneously instead of just way faster. As Savitar's obsession grew, so did his followers, and he became the leader of basically his own self-worshipping cult, and he desired even more after that. So he went after the only speedster around at the time, Johnny Quick. The fight ended up causing Max Mercury to show up and led him into the speed field where Savitar bounced off, but he did at some point return and instead wanted to eliminate his competition including the Flash, Impulse, and especially Max, but he ended up dying in Flash Volume 2 number 111 from 1996. Halfway through into number 5, Hot Pursuit. What is the Flash known for? Exactly, running really fast. That's his whole thing. Running so fast that he can beat instantaneous teleportation that he has in the comics. So, what's the deal with Hot Pursuit? First introduced in the Flash Volume 3 number 6. Hot Pursuit is a version of Barry Allen from another universe who came to warn his counterpart about an impending disaster, which ends up being Flashpoint. But the difference here is that this Flash doesn't run. Instead, he has a Speed Force powered motorcycle called the Cosmic Motorcycle. Yeah, his cowl is also a motorcycle helmet, so at least he's being safe about it. And his suit is black and white instead of, red. Unfortunately, Hot Pursuit dies 6 issues after he was introduced in Flash Volume 3 number 12 as a part of the Road to Flashpoint event, but the moniker Hot Pursuit would later be adopted by Patty Spivot as she stole his gear from the Central City Police Department. And at 4, No Rules to Follow. In an Elseworlds story where metahumans are hated, basically just mutants in the Marvel Universe, 10 individuals with powers band together to try to get the world to trust them by doing good deeds. These people, who on another Earth would be known as the Flash, Shark, Fire, Dr. Light, Polaris, Power Girl, Poison Ivy, Tasmanian Devil, Changeling, and Metamorpho, unfortunately don't accomplish their goal, since their attempts to contain a nuclear meltdown just make everything worse. After this disaster, metahumans go into hiding, and a few metas, Flash included, began raiding military bases that had previously attacked them. But after a battle with the Control Squad, which was a group of high-tech operatives that the Wayne Foundation had created to fight metahumans, caused an even further split, resulting in Ivy, Changeling, and Metamorpho all hating the military even more. But when Superman showed himself, everyone eventually kind of accepted it. Then Batman, or I guess Wayne, ended up creating the version of the Justice League that was just known as the Justice League. But again, this is a very interesting Flash. It's basically the Flash cosplaying Juggernaut or Juggernaut cosplaying Flash, whichever one you want to pick. And at 3, Speed Demon. Remember how I love to mention the Amalgam universe that combines the DC and Marvel characters? And then I also mentioned Iron Lantern and no one believed that it was a thing. Yeah, it was. It's a combination of Hal Jordan and Tony Stark. But today I'm presenting presenting to you Speed Demon, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze, aka Blaze Allen. He was a circus daredevil who sold his soul to become the first Speed Demon. The demon component of this character, Etrigan, was also formerly Jay Garrick before the Night Spectre stole Jay's soul. The Night Spectre approached Blaze and asked him to serve him in his attempts to collect souls of the most pure and most corrupt. Blaze Allen refused to do so, so to persuade him, at his wedding night, Night Spectre stole Iris's soul. Blaze then accepted the bond, hoping to get Iris back, or at least to ensure her safety. Speed Demon also speaks only in rhymes, but they're a speedster with a flaming skull head that can also breathe hellfire, okay? It's pretty freaking dope. Wally West, also, who is an amalgam of Wally West and Danny Ketch, was the next Speed Demon after that who accepted the power in order to help his uncle get Iris's soul back. But ultimately, in at number 2, Wizard. This version of the Flash actually comes from the Marvel Universe, believe it or not. And while yes, speedsters are like a superhero archetype, this one is like a deliberate reference to the Flash from an unofficial Justice League versus Avengers crossover fight in the Marvel Universe. The Wizard is a member of Squadron Supreme, which comes from a parallel dimension of the Marvel multiverse. Stanley Stewart is his name, and while running late one night, he ran through a strange fog. Over the next few weeks, he gained the ability to run faster than anyone else, which I didn't know Fog had the ability to do, but hey, it's comics. The original goal of Squadron, which Wizard was a founding member of, was to create a utopia, which they would have accomplished. They turned much of the world into a paradise within the first year, but stopped when a former member, known as Nighthawk, convinced them that it was in essence a dictatorship. Shortly after the project ended, multiple members of the team got stranded in the main Marvel universe, but did end up making it home. And finally, in at number 1, The Crash. This is like my favorite alternate version of the Flash. Coming from Earth C-, the Crash is the fastest animal alive, and a member of the JLA, or the Just a Lotta Animals group, which is this world's Justice League. On Earth C-, everyone is some form of animal, and it's probably the most ridiculous thing that you could ever read. While his name is unknown, the Crash is this universe's Flash, and not only that, he's a turtle, okay? In a classic tortoise in the hare scenario, slow and steady wins the race to get super speed and a connection to the Speed Force, I guess. And I'm not even kidding. He fights against characters with names like Weather Weasel instead of Weather Wizard, and that's hilarious. I love it so much. He was first introduced in Captain Carrot and his amazing Zoo Crew number 14, which is even better, which features superheroes like Wonder Rabbit, Aquaduck, and Batmouse. Not a Batman bat, which is kind of confusing. Oh, and the Green Lambkin instead of the Green Lantern. But again, there's also Green Sparrow.
Coming in at number 10 is Earth 616. Most fans of Miles Morales know this already, but for those who aren't aware, the Miles Morales that has become the second Spider-Man and who all the alternate Miles are based on is actually not native to the main Marvel universe. That Miles actually comes from Marvel's Ultimate Universe, the Earth 1610 universe. So then, that kind of begs the question of who and where the heck is the main continuity Miles Morales? Well, he's there, but he is much different. Miles Morales was a member of the Rigoletto crime family who ended up with a 3-year sentence in Rikers Island to cover for his cousin, which got him the respect of the family and of Wilson Fisk, who Miles saved in prison. Miles and Fisk opened a restaurant together after they both got out, and when Wilson took over the crime family, he let Miles go and live a happy life with his wife. Unfortunately though, when his wife passed away, Miles went to find the same woman in an alternate universe, which brought him into conflict with Peter Parker and the main Miles Morales Spider-Man, and eventually brought him to Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe, where he found his love again. Now when he returned to Earth 616, Miles had outfitted himself with an Ant-Man suit, Iron Man repulsors, and a Captain America looking shield, and he brought some friends in order to face his younger Miles counterpart and try and run the streets of New York once again. Number 9. Thor. Last year, in 2022, in case you were watching this from the future, we got a whole series of What If comics centered specifically around the character of Miles Morales, and each issue of that comic gave us a different Miles who had taken after a different hero. For the 4th issue of this series, the World Tree of Yggdrasil had found itself in Brooklyn, creating a version of Brooklyn that was Asgardified, or an Asgard that has been Brooklynified. I guess, you pick. In case you haven't guessed, the Miles Morales of temporary reality number 951 has indeed become Thor Odin's son. All the other classic pillars of the Thor mythos are here too, substituted with Miles' mom and dad for Frigga and Odin, his friends substituting as the Warriors 3, and of course his uncle Aaron as the trickster god Loki, who tricks Thor Odin's son Morales into stealing the skull of the frost giant Laufey in order to impress his pops. If you check this one out, please let me know what you think of all the rhyming and rapping this version of Miles tries to do, and if it made you cringe like it made me cringe, because it really did make me cringe like quite a lot. Why did they do that? I don't know. Number 8, the Ultimate Hulk. Yes, the Ultimate Universe's version of the Hulk is similar to the regular Hulk, but his personality? No, it's pretty whack. Bruce Banner, no matter where you find him, is an emotionally scarred dude. It's a part of why he is the way that he is, but the Ultimate Bruce Banner? He's selfish, self-absorbed, and kinda straight just creepy. He was so desperate to be noticed and recognized that he willingly injected himself with an experimental version of a new super soldier formula, turning him into a monstrous version of the Hulk. Yes, there was no Gamma Bomb here, not at first. This Hulk had little to no regard for human life and collateral damage. He even enjoyed to feast on others from time to time. He was completely nuts is what I'm telling you. Ultimate Hulk would join up with Maker, Quicksilver, Kang, and a mind-controlled Human Torch to make up the team known as the Dark Ultimates. Yeah, it's safe to say the Hulk here was a villain more than anything else, but he would eventually align himself to be a bit better, but not by much. Number 7, the Breaker of Worlds. The Breaker of Worlds Hulk first appeared in a kind of side story within the Immortal Hulk story. It was more like a worst case scenario kind of thing. In an alternate timeline, the Immortal Hulk becomes possessed by the One Below All, who went rampaging until the end of time, and the end of this iteration of the multiverse. He has destroyed everything. Literally everything. He has defeated Franklin Richards, Galactus, all the cosmic entities, and he shattered planets and crushed stars with his bare hands. The story itself follows an alien that had explored out trying to find out if anything was left in the universe, and there wasn't. This alien is living in the 9th cosmos, meaning the 9th version of the multiverse after the Immortal Hulk / the One Below All destroyed the last version. This new 9th multiverse is in tatters. The One Below All Hulk has consumed the souls of every being he has destroyed, bolstering up his own power enough so that he is a planet-sized Hulk, and he just flies around like a living curse, ending all things in existence until there is nothing left ever. Luckily though, the alien sent a warning far into the past to the present time, and the Breaker of Worlds won't actually happen, but it is what happens when the One Below All wins, and it's not good. Number 6, Space Punisher Hulk. This version of the Hulk, appearing in the really awesome Space Punisher story, at least I think it's awesome, other people don't agree, is a 4-armed, 30-foot tall, murderous monstrosity. He completely took out the Fantastic Four. He bit Sabretooth in half, took off Deadpool's head, and threw him out into space, and he completely decimated a group of 6 Watchers, as in the race that Uatu the Watcher is a part of. If you don't know, the Watchers are sort of on par in power to Galactus, so yes, this is pretty impressive. Another fun fact about this future space version of the Hulk is that the Hulk is more like an exoskeleton with Bruce Banner contained within the Hulk's chest. But they are still separate entities, allowing the Space Punisher to end the life of Bruce Banner, which in turn allows the Hulk to just jump off into space free and leaving everyone alone. It's intense, it's really weird, it's extremely brutal as you'd expect from a Punisher story, and we kinda love it. Number 5, Weapon H. What do you get when you combine Wolverine and the Hulk? No, it's not a joke, you get an absolute monster of a character. In Totally Awesome Hulk number 21, we're introduced to Clayton Cortez, a former Marine who was subjected to Weapon X's Batch H division, which primarily tried to create Hulk-Wolverine hybrid cyborgs. And you're right, that does sound absolutely awesome. Clayton himself, though, became H-Alpha. He has an adamantium skeleton, a healing factor, and claws just like Wolverine. But Add on to that the ability to change from human form to his Hulk-like form that gives him near limitless super strength and other Hulk abilities, and that is one scary powerful guy. He is an absolute beast, and his creator says he can defeat nearly everyone on the planet, which I honestly kinda believe. Now, let's just hope he gets some actual viewership and enough popularity to stand as his own character. Number 4, the Maestro. Okay, imagine a version of the Hulk with twice his strength who retains the intelligence of Bruce Banner. Now take that Hulk and make him a ruthless, tyrannical ruler, and you get Maestro. Maestro is a possible future version of the Hulk who took out literally all the other heroes and villains and names himself Emperor over the whole world. Our Hulk first comes into contact with Maestro when Rick Jones's daughter takes him to the future to fight his evil future self. But this Maestro guy, he ain't playing around, okay? In their very first fight, Maestro won by simply snap crackle popping the Hulk's neck. That's it. Done. Over. And then he waited for the Hulk to heal, taunting him and villain monologuing at him the whole time about all the terrible things that they go through as the Hulk to create Maestro. The only way our Hulk could win was to bring Maestro back in time to when they gained their abilities, the Gamma Bomb, which destroyed Maestro on the atomic scale. The sheer idea of Maestro haunted Bruce and Hulk's thoughts for the rest of time, but of course, that wasn't really the end of Maestro, and he's been kind of floating around ever since. Number 3, Monk. Of all the alternate Hulks we've got here, none are quite like Monk. Monk comes from a little alternate universe story called 5 Ronin, which sees feudal Japanese versions of Wolverine, Punisher, Psylocke, Deadpool, and of course, the Hulk. What's interesting here is that none of these characters seem to have the superpowers that make them superheroes in the regular 616 universe, or if they do, their powers are extremely subtle and low-key, and an excellent example of that is the Hulk. From reading Hulk's issue of the 5-issue story, we can gather that Monk used to be a ferocious samurai back in his day. Monk is a massive man, and he wielded a massive sword, but in his warrior rages, he would do some pretty unspeakable things, and because of the last one to happen to him, he swore himself off of the warrior life and instead decided to set in his roots at the top of a mountain in a sort of sanctuary, just trying to find inner peace. Even when the nearby villagers came to the former samurai for help against some bandits, he refused until he was visited by a Ronin with a mouth, Deadpool, who convinced him to use his rage one last time. Number 2, Amadeus Cho. Now, unlike pretty much every other Hulk here, Amadeus Cho is not from an alternate universe to the main 616 Incredible Bruce Banner Hulk. By 15, Amadeus Cho was the 7th smartest person on the planet, with a mind that functioned like a hypercomputer, but that also put a target on his back and led him to become friends with another genius, Bruce Banner. Cho first popped up on the scene back in 2005, but it wasn't until 10 years later, in 2015, when the Hulk got stuck with a dangerous amount of a new type of radiation that Amadeus took on a different form. Using special nanites, Amadeus absorbed the Hulk's powers, becoming a gamma-powered monster and the new totally awesome Hulk. But unlike Bruce, Amadeus found himself having much more control over his Hulk persona and prided himself on being a better and smarter Hulk. Unfortunately, over time that wouldn't last, especially when he exiled himself to find control and ended up on Sakaar. When he finally came back to Earth and declared war on all his enemies, he had to be stopped by his allies, and in doing so, they injected him with nanites that countered the ones he himself had placed in himself, and that's very confusing, I know. Amadeus didn't lose his Hulk powers, instead, he retained just a portion of the power and now goes by the superhero name Brawn. And finally, in at number 1, it's Aborigine Hulk. You ever heard of the House of M, when Wanda Maximoff changed reality to make the mutant Magneto the ruler of the world with his family and all that jazz? Well, in this world, when Bruce Banner transformed into the Hulk after the Gamma explosion, it is believed by Mr. Ross that he became a spy of Magneto, and he becomes hunted down like normal. But not like normal, he travels all the way to Australia, and he settles in with a group of Aborigine where he becomes a part of their tribe and finds an inner peace with Banner and the other guy, meaning the Hulk. But of course, the conflict between the mutants and the last remaining resisting humans finds its way to the outback and onto the territory of this Aborigine tribe. With kind of a control over the Hulk persona, Hulk and Banner help the humans halt their persecution by their mutant overlords, eventually helping AIM to rule Australia. I didn't think that would ever happen. There's this really cool moment where Hulk is using a whale to cover a submarine. I know that sounds confusing, but if you just look at it, I promise it's amazing.
And at 10, Blitzkrieg. Earth X Flash, or Blitzkrieg, was born and raised in a world where Germany won World War II. And since this is a sensitive subject for YouTube, I'm going to avoid using specific terms, so sorry in advance, but you know what I'm talking about. While his real name is unknown though, Der Blitz, as he's known in German, is a member of Gerechtigkeit, which is basically just an evil regime version of the Justice League, also referred to as the JL Axis. The current members are Brunhild, the Earth X Wonder Woman, Leatherwing, Earth X Batman, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Flash, Green Lantern, and Overman, which is the Superman of Earth X. But this version of the Flash also appears in the Freedom Fighters The Ray animated series that takes place in the Arrowverse, but was interestingly missing from the Crisis on Earth X crossover event that featured characters from that show. Instead, this Flash was just Eobard Thawne of Earth 1 wearing Harrison Wells' face, who went and joined the regime, which is a whole other can of worms. But it leads people to believe that he killed the Earth X Flash in order to prove himself. And at 9, Kingdom Come Flash. Wally West from Earth 22 is weird to me, okay, since it feels kind of backwards. In the Kingdom Come universe of Earth 22, Wally West received his speed through unknown means, but nonetheless he still became the Flash. When Superman retired, Wally kept going, but he kept going and kept going and never stopped, running from scene to scene, disaster to disaster, never taking a break. For this, however, he had a daughter who got her speed genetically and became Kid Flash, but this is where it really gets weird. His children were named Iris West and Barry West. It kind of sets me on edge because they're supposed to be older than him, but like Wally is supposed to inherit the Flash mantle. Not to mention that this time Barry and Iris are actually biological siblings, which only makes all the memes about the Arrowverse even worse. But considering how Wanda and Pietro in the Ultimate Universe is a thing, this kind of thing isn't anything new for the comics. Gotta love those Game of Thrones stories, right? Okay, well in this universe his kids don't end up dating, but you know what I mean.
Number 8, Mangaverse. It gets really weird for Venom in the Marvel Mangaverse. In this reality, Venom is actually a master ninja and son of May Parker and her first husband, before she was married to Ben, Shinji. May in this reality is actually also a skilled ninja too, so Mangaverse guys, Mangaverse. Venom here is not directly attached to a symbiote himself, although in this reality there does exist a version of the symbiote, a black suit. This black suit actually came from a Shadow Clan amulet, and Venom does end up attached to the Shadow Clan, so there are some connections there. When Peter becomes corrupted by the black suit, Venom sacrifices himself to free Peter. Number 7, Mania. Mania is a clone of Venom. Mania was actually created from a sample of Venom that had been acquired. However, that hasn't stopped the symbiote from taking on a life all its own, as it's continued to evolve in the comics, acquiring new purposes and hosts along the way. The Mania symbiote was first created by the Ararat Corporation from a piece of Venom's tongue that they had harvested. It was intended to be used as a weapon to basically wipe out all life on the planet Earth, but this plan, well, it didn't end up working out as they had hoped. And while initially the Mania symbiote became obsessed with feasting off of its victim's fear and literally eating people, it eventually found a stable host in Andy Benton, and even became a hero for a time. That is, before it was taken by the super sinister Lee Price, who himself was also one of the worst hosts the actual Venom symbiote ever had as well. Number 6, Thor Machine. Thor Machine was the editorial name given to this alternate. This version of Thor is one you might recognize as War Machine, aka Jim Rhodes, aka Rhodey, Tony Stark's good friend and ally. However, this isn't the Rhodes of Earth 616, the main continuity. This is the Rhodes of Earth 12311, home of Technopolis, and one of the alternate realities that was created when God Emperor Doom rebuilt the multiverse in his image, following the incursions destroying the multiverse we knew previous to Secret Wars, the 2015 Secret Wars, to be clear. Here, Rhodes was known as Grand Marshal Jim Rhodes, the Thor of this reality and an ally to the Baron of this domain, an alternate Tony Stark. Instead of him being an Asgardian god, this version of Thor actually gets his powers from his armor, which resembles the look of Thor's costume and armor. Number 5, Jane Foster. Jane is her own character, but was, for a time, also Thor. Currently in the comics, she's instead known as Valkyrie right now, but before that, she was granted the powers of Mjolnir after Thor was deemed unworthy and lost his ability to use it. The hammer called to Jane, and she answered the call, becoming Thor, known editorially as Mighty Thor. Eventually, Jane gave up the ability to become Thor in her final fight against Mangog. She sacrificed herself as transforming into Thor was actually killing her. Currently suffering from cancer, the transformation basically wiped clean any of the progress her chemotherapy treatments were making in fighting back against the disease. In the end, Jane bound Mangog in chains intended for Fenris that were attached to Mjolnir and hurled up the hammer into the sun. This destroyed the hammer and seemingly killed Jane, ending her time as the mysterious Lady Thor. Of course, Thor Odinson would not give up, and surprisingly, with Odin's help, was able to revive her, with her passing the mantle of Thor back to Odinson. Number 4. MCU. I mean, can I really do a list like this without talking about Chris Hemsworth's take on the character? I do not think that I can. While Thor Love and Thunder was not exactly the masterpiece we were all hoping it to be for the Thor and Marvel superhero franchise, you can't say that the character development we've seen for Thor has been amazing. By far, Thor has seen some of the most character development among the versions of the heroes we've come to know in the MCU. I would say Thor and Scarlet Witch oddly have seen some of the greatest developments throughout the more than decade we've been watching superhero films and television. Thor went from a reckless god who didn't really feel he belonged on Earth, nor really wanted to be there, to one of Midgard's greatest heroes, to an orphan and relatively directionless Asgardian, to the hero of his people, to someone who himself went toe-to-toe with Gorr in an attempt to protect not just his people, but all the gods of the universe. That's quite the journey, honestly. Also, he got a haircut, which for Thor, honestly, that's a pretty big deal. Number 3. Loki. A version of Loki who we initially knew as Kid Loki, but who has since become the main Loki in the comics, no longer a kid version of himself currently, was actually once Thor. He took up the mantle during the Marvel Axis event. Now, if you don't know of Axis, it was basically an event where the alignments of many major heroes and villains in the Marvel universe were flipped. For Thor, this meant he became a villain. For Loki, however, this meant he was free of the guilt of his past misdeeds and basically became a straight-up hero. It also meant he was deemed worthy to wield Mjolnir, which he did, himself becoming the hero Thor and fighting against his now evil brother Odinson. However, after the alignments of everyone were once more reversed, returning everyone, or almost everyone anyways, back to their old alignments, the guilt crept back in, making Loki feel unworthy and ending his brief time as the hero Thor. Number 2. Ultimate Thor. Ultimate Thor initially seemed to not be Thor at all, but just a human man named Thorleif Gorman, who was deemed delusional. However, in truth, he was actually Thor, and the delusions he would later suffer would actually reveal themselves to in fact be true memories. Claiming to be the Norse god of thunder at first led to him being institutionalized, but later these delusions were in fact confirmed to be his true memories by Dr. Donald Blake, whom Thor actually recognized as the reincarnation of his half-brother Balder. Thor was simply remembering after being exiled for years to Midgard and made to forget. Initially, it was the suit that Thor wore, which was given to him by the Dome, that gave him his powers. But as his memories came back, the power within him was unlocked and returned to him ultimately by Odin so that he might use it to defeat Loki. And he reclaimed his actual powers, not needing the suit to necessarily channel them. Though one of the interesting things is that it's not really fully established in the Ultimate Comics to what extent, even after having his powers returned to him, that he relies on the suit, and to what extent the powers that he displays are actually just innate from within himself. So it's kind of like a combo deal. It's like he has powers, but he's also using the suit. Number 1. Beta Ray Bill. I love when I get to put Bill at number 1. You know, I just think he deserves it. Pretty crazy to think, but Beta Ray Bill was also once technically a Thor alternate. And the origin of him being Thor actually kind of goes all the way back pretty much to his own origin story in the comics. When passing near Earth with his people, the Corbinites, he was intercepted by S.H.I.E.L.D., who sent Thor to investigate. His ship, the Scuttlebutt, classified Thor as a threat, and so Beta Ray Bill went out to fight Thor. Surprisingly, Bill pretty easily won and even was able to claim Mjolnir, becoming himself Thor. Bill claimed he should get to keep the hammer as he won it fair and square in their fight. Odin ended up getting them to battle again to determine who should get to actually keep the hammer. And once more, actually, Bill won that fight. However, ultimately it was decided that Thor would get Mjolnir back and a new hammer instead, known as Stormbreaker, was made for Bill. That's about it for this one, my friends. Till next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.